I always wanted to serve on a jury.
I'm really super excited to be here, so I really appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Creating this whole trial, Daddy.
I want to give a big shout out to the 13th Jury Podcast and Brandi.
Yeah, I applaud you guys. Keep doing what you're doing.
That every time you run into Phil Barber, you should reach for it.
And then I just look to the jury, and it's sort of like, look.
I was in the eye of the storm, and you guys were watching the storm.
Hey, if you're bored of work, come pop in and say, hey, want some coffee?
You are a ray of sunshine, and I love what you've done with your YouTube channel.
Hello and good morning. I am obviously not Brandi. My name is Jessika, and I am guest hosting for this week, Monday through Thursday. And yes, Brandi is actually at the trial on location, so she's going to be giving updates in the chat. And previously, when we've done this, she's come on her phone and talk to us, so we'll see. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. So they had started jury selection this morning. We're just waiting for the trial to get started, so we'll see what happens with that. If it takes too long, maybe we'll split this up in two parts. We'll see. So, good morning, Steve. Good morning, everybody. So I am trying to keep up with 3 different destinations. So, and trying to keep up with the chat. So if I miss something, I apologize. And yeah, so since we're waiting for it to get started, I have some news clips from over the years with this trial. So I figured it couldn't hurt for us to watch some of these news clips while we're waiting for it to get started. In the morning on my channel, I typically go through news clips and stuff that's happening around the world. So kind of do something like that with this case. And Brandi did make a video that posted 7 hours ago. So make sure to check that out that way you can get totally caught up on the case. There's so much going on with this situation. It's been 9 years coming. So yeah, Brandi broke it down in that video. I didn't even get to see all of it because it was just posted last night. So I may not know everything that's going on either. And just to let you guys know, I am not an expert. So, I'm not going to try to give any legal advice or anything like that. I am a victim advocate, and I started being a victim advocate after my fiance was murdered in 2019. So that's what got me started in that. And I've been involved in the true crime community the last couple years, trying to push ethical true crime and stuff like that, and just to educate people on victims' rights and what murder victims' families go through. And I've helped get some legislation passed in Texas, and there's going to be another legislation session coming up soon, so we're going to need some help with that. So definitely pay attention to what's going on in your state, on what bills are coming up and all that, because they're going to need your help. They're going to need your support. No, Mike. Yeah, I'm not an expert. I'll give legal advice. Yeah, don't do that. So my opinions are my own, and I try to not say stuff if I don't know what's going on. So I may ask you guys questions about stuff. So I might need your help understanding some of the stuff that's going on. Brandi knows much more than I do. My expertise is more in victims' rights, not necessarily what's going on in the trials themselves. And plus, each state is different. I've done most of the work that I've done in Texas. Oh, I appreciate you guys in the chat. You're so sweet. All right, so I'm trying to figure out which video is the oldest. It had... Oh well, we'll just not do these in any specific order. I guess I'll start from that. All right, so I have 6 news clips that I saved that have to do with this trial. It might be redundant information. I haven't had time to screen them, so I just wanted to save them and play some news clips for you guys to help see what's been out there. So let's see. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with this case since you're here, but the father was claimed to be missing for a few years. The family was getting text messages but no phone calls, and Brandi's friend actually went to college with the defendant and had been at the house. And yeah, we could, if the trial is still not getting started, then I can play Brandi's video. That's a good idea. Because like I said, I only got about 15 minutes in, and there's a lot that's going on with this case. So, all right. So here we go. Here's some news clips about the case.
Killing her dad when she was only 7 years old.
The dead man's wife is currently charged with his murder. Fox 35's Chris Lindsay is joining us live here in the studio tonight. So Chris, the attorney for the wife says the real story is now coming out.
Yes, well, back in 2018, police discovered Michael Shaver's body buried on Laurie Shaver's property. He was killed 3 years earlier in 2015. Laurie's defense team tells me she was keeping her daughter's secret, but now they want the truth told. A new twist in a murder case. Attorneys for Laurie Shaver, who was charged with shooting and killing her husband, Michael, in 2015, now claim the couple's daughter pulled the trigger.
She relayed to me, in extreme detail what had happened between them.
He wants the judge to reconsider his stance after new documents say the daughter confessed to killing Michael Shaver. She was 7 years old at the time of the murder.
I didn't see anything in this child to indicate to me that this child was being dishonest.
The attorney tells me Michael Shaver showed up to the house and began attacking Laurie. It was then, he says, when the little girl went to grab a gun and shot Michael in the head.
I filed a motion to ask the court to have an expert appointed to evaluate the child, to see that the child is testifying truthfully, honestly, and that there's no tampering with the child.
The defense wants the now teenager to testify.
I think the court is stepping on the defendant's due process rights.
I spoke with Dr. Pogos Vaskanian. He's a board-certified psychiatrist.
Children may make confessions even if they did not do it.
He has no connection to the case. However, he tells me the evaluation isn't as simple as it sounds. Not only is it hard to prove what children knew or were feeling at the time of an incident, it's also hard to determine they know the gravity of the situation.
Do children understand consequences of their behavior in the same manner as adults do? No.
I was supposed to start earlier, but it was pushed back. Wiggs is hopeful it will start by the end of the year. Reporting in the studio, Chris Lindsay, Fox 35 News.
Happening today, a woman accused of murdering her husband and burying his body in the backyard of the family's Lake County home is due back in court for a hearing. And we've been following this case surrounding Laurie Shaver ever since Michael's remains were found in 2018. But now there's a potentially big new twist in this case, a confession, but not from the suspect. Our Mark Lehman's been going through the records and joins us live from the Lake County Courthouse. And what have you learned, Mark?
That confession allegedly came from a 14-year-old girl. That's according to a motion from the defense. The attorneys are also calling for a re-evaluation. This as their client is facing murder charges in the death of her husband. It's a potential big development in the case of a Lake County woman accused of killing her husband. Attorneys for Laurie Shaver filing a motion saying a 14-year-old girl has confessed to killing Michael Shaver. A request to have the girl evaluated has already been denied, and the defense is asking the judge to reconsider. The girl would have been just 7 years old when Michael Shaver was last seen alive in 2015. He was reported missing, and deputies say the story Laurie Shaver told them continued to fall apart throughout the investigation.
Everything was just bizarre. Everything was suspicious from the get-go. I mean, from the very beginning.
Court records show Laurie Shaver took steps to conceal her husband's death, including maintaining his social media. His remains were found buried under a concrete slab on her property in 2018. The investigation spanning another 2 years before Laurie Shaver was taken into custody and charged with second-degree murder. When it comes to the alleged confession from the 14-year-old girl, it remains to be seen what kind of impact, if any, it will have on the case. We're expecting to learn more as that hearing gets underway. Lawyers are expected in court at 9 this morning. For now, reporting live in Lake County, Mark Lehman, Getting Results, News 6.
Thank you, Mark. Back to our big story at 4 o'clock. After a 2-year investigation, the wife of a man whose remains were found buried in a backyard has been arrested.
Those remains were found buried underneath a concrete slab and fire pit.
37-year-old Laurie Shaver is now facing a second-degree murder charge. Lake County deputies say back in 2018, they found human remains of her husband, Michael Shaver, at their Claremont home along Sandy Pines Road. News 6's Clay Lepard spoke to the victim's friend, who alerted deputies to conduct a well-being check after he hadn't heard from him.
It's obviously a big relief.
More than 5 years after Michael Shaver was last seen alive, friends and family may finally have an answer as to who deputies say killed this Lake County man.
But hopefully we're going to have closure. It's going to be a long, drawn-out thing, I'm sure. I mean, Michael was a great guy. I mean, he was just a real great guy.
Deputies arrested Shaver's wife, Laurie, and charged her with second-degree murder and accessory after the fact.
You may contact him for any statement.
We spoke to Laurie Shaver back in early 2018 when deputies first searched the Shaver property near Claremont and eventually found Michael Shaver's remains under a cement slab in the backyard. Court paperwork says Laurie etched her name in the cement above Shaver's body, along with her boyfriend at the time. This investigation all began after a close friend of Michael Shaver's called deputies. He says he spoke to a prior girlfriend and the two began to reminisce about Michael Shaver, who they hadn't seen in years.
When she visited the property, she noticed, that Mike's wallet and cell phone was there and Mike wasn't there. And then she had told me about this weird concrete slab that she ended up seeing on Laurie's Facebook at one point. So I kind of put all these little pieces together. I'm like, this isn't right at all. Something's weird. That was what triggered me to call the authorities.
For some time now, we have felt that we have a good, strong case against Laurie Shaver.
Lieutenant John Harrell with the Lake County Sheriff's Office says Laurie remained their prime suspect throughout the investigation, as the story she told them continued to fall apart.
What were some of those nuggets that stood out in this case that just came off a little bit unusual?
All of her lies from the get-go. Everything was just bizarre. Everything was suspicious from the get-go. I mean, from the very beginning.
According to court paperwork, investigators believe Laurie Shaver took quite a few steps to conceal her husband's death, including maintaining his social media, using his bank cards, and even sending a woman flowers. At this time, detectives are not revealing how they believe Michael Shaver died. Laurie remains locked up without bond.
It's a big step forward to justice for my best friend and his family.
In Lake County, Clay Lepard, Getting Results, News 6.
All new tonight, it's been almost 3 years since her husband's remains were found in the...
Why would you post that on Facebook? Like, if you hid somebody's remains there, why would you put a very obvious concrete slab and then post a picture of that on Facebook? That seems very stupid. Or at least plant something over it.
backyard of her home, and a Lake County woman is still awaiting trial, facing a murder charge. In 2018, the remains of Michael Shaver were found buried under a concrete slab on Laurie Shaver's property. Tonight, News 6's Amanda Castro talks with Michael's family, who says it's been tough, but they still will not give up until they get justice.
It hasn't been easy.
Stacy Turner says her family is still waiting for closure 1 year after an arrest was made in her brother's murder.
I honestly didn't think it was this long, gonna be this long. However, I do know that the police and the DA are still working diligently every single day.
Turner speaking only to News 6 for the first time since the arrest. Lake County deputies say the last time anyone saw her younger brother, Michael Shaver, was in November 2015. Turner says she remembers her last conversation with him just a couple weeks before authorities think he was killed.
And I'll always remember his last words to me were, "I love you, sis." So that I keep that with me every single day.
Turner says family and friends received messages claiming to be from Michael for years until he was reported missing in 2018. Deputies searching his Claremont home, where they say they found his remains. Turner recalls the day she learned the news and having to tell her family.
It was devastating enough knowing that they found a bone, and it was even more devastating having to tell our mother.
It took 2 more years before deputies made an arrest, charging Michael's wife, Laurie Shaver, with his murder in 2020. She has since been released from jail on bond.
It was a bit of relief because I thought, well, maybe our family can start to get some closure.
Turner says her brother was full of life, whose passions were his children and fixing airplanes.
He was just such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being who loved with all of his heart. And he didn't deserve this.
Adding her family won't give up until they get justice.
Everybody still has hope and faith that the truth is going to come out and that justice will truly be served.
We spoke to the state attorney's office, who says the COVID pandemic is delaying court proceedings, but says the case is moving forward. We also reached out to Shaver's attorney for comment, but never heard back. Reporting in the newsroom, Amanda Castro, Getting Results.
Yeah, the pandemic really screwed up the whole court system. In Harris County, the average wait time for a murder trial is 5 years. And a lot can happen in 5 years. Okay, so I have 2 more news clips that I'm going to play, and then we'll play Brandi's video. And if court still hasn't started after that, I'll stop the stream for now, and if they start court today, I'll come back, and I have it scheduled Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm going to be the guest host for those days. And then there's somebody else on Friday. So just to let you guys know what the plan is, since we're not sure how long jury selection is going to take and all that, I'm going to send Brandi a message too and see what's going on. So that way we stay up to date and don't miss anything.
Of a former Otsego County man whose remains were found in Florida has been arrested and charged in connection with his death after a 2-year investigation. Lake County Sheriff officials in Florida say deputies discovered Michael Shaver's remains in March of 2018 buried beneath a concrete slab in the backyard of the home he lived in with his wife, Laurie Shaver. Michael Shaver, who was originally from Lawrence in Otsego County, was originally reported missing in 2015, but his body wasn't found until 3 years later. Now, his wife, 37-year-old Laurie Shaver, is charged with second-degree murder. She's being held in Lake County Jail in Florida without bail tonight. Michael Shaver was an airman. A month after his remains were found, his family and friends held a memorial for him at the Oneonta Municipal Airport, where he first learned to fly.
Deputies say they're working to learn what happened to a man who's been missing now for 3 years.
Yesterday, we told you Lake County deputies say it was his friend who initially reported him missing. Today, we're learning more about Michael Shaver, seen here, and what deputies are calling strange coincidences involving his wife. Channel 9's Mert Price live in Lake County tonight. And Mert, deputies told you Shaver's wife was not cooperating, but she says otherwise.
Yeah, we reached out to her attorney today, and he said that she was cooperating, and she even gave deputies a list of people who had beef with Michael. But deputies here say they have a different story. Today, we're learning more information about Michael Shaver, who deputies say has been missing since 2015. Investigators say no one ever reported him missing. That was until 2 weeks ago when a man contacted the sheriff's office and asked them to go check on his friend, Michael, because he hasn't talked to him in a while. Deputies then went to Shaver's Claremont home and talked with his wife, Laurie, about his disappearance.
She invited us to the house. We were talking to her.
But they say that quickly changed, and since then, they say
She has not been cooperative. She told detectives to speak to my attorney.
We tried to ask Laurie Shaver about the investigation into your missing husband.
I have an attorney.
We found out back in 2016, Michael was sued by Discover Bank, and the courts issued a notice to appear. However, according to the documents, the person who tried to serve the paperwork says he showed up at Michael's home and honked, but the gate was locked and no one came out. The person serving the notice left behind a business card. Days later, he says he got a voicemail from Michael's ex-wife, Laurie. She said that Michael hasn't lived there since 2014 when he was arrested for battery with a firearm. She said she doesn't know where he lives. Deputies say Michael hasn't had any cell phone or bank activity since he vanished, which deputies believe is strange.
You would think if he's in another state, he would need resources in order to move there, in order to survive.
Now, we checked and we couldn't find any court records here in Lake County that shows Michael and Laurie got a divorce. We also talked to one of Michael's former co-workers, and he told me back in 2015, Michael just stopped showing up for work. He says when the co-workers sent him a text message to see if he was okay, they say they got a response basically saying, don't contact me again, I quit, and you can have all my tools. The police investigators are still trying to just figure out what happened here. We'll continue to follow it and bring you the latest on Eyewitness News. For now, reporting live in Lake County.
I don't know if she's out on bond. I saw somebody say that she was, but then the news said that she didn't have bond. I don't know. Does anybody know that for sure? I'm going to Google it. Can look up the court records. It would show us there too. Let's see. I don't know. I have no idea. I will keep looking into that. All right, so let's get Brandi's video. If Brandi said it, then she knows. Okay, so she did say it. All right, so we're gonna get Brandi's video so that way we can all get caught up together while we wait for court to get started. Oh, hold on, I got a message. Okay. And Tash, I did change my batteries in my mouse. I've been really bad about that, but I can actually move my mouse around properly. All right, so let's get Brandi's video up. That way we can all get caught up and get all the details. The video is about an hour long. Do you guys want me to put it on like 1.5 speed and speed it up, or do you guys want it at normal speed? Let me know. All right. I'm getting the video. Oh, and I sing a lot, so I apologize in advance. I just randomly start singing, so. All right, we'll do 1.25. Okay. Here's the video from 8 hours ago. All right, we'll do 1.25. Okay, we'll do 1.25 and then we'll see if we need to move it up, because I see a few people say 1.25. All right. Come on, YouTube, finish loading. Okay, maybe I should do a poll. I do live in my own musical. I constantly sing, especially alone, and do little dances and stuff. Let's see. All right. And I do get distracted very easily, so I apologize if my dog or cat does something that distracts me. I'm so sorry. And my cat might jump up on the keyboard and all that stuff. But she's cute. The dog you won't see, but All right. Okay, we'll start 1.25, and then if it's not fast enough, we'll speed it up more, okay?
Think about the kids, not
No,
himself.
go back. I rewound you. Thank you. Oh, and I yell at
Hello,
YouTube.
13 jurors. I know that I haven't done many videos lately. It's been a minute, but I wanted to do a video instead of just a podcast on this one because this is a special circumstance. On Monday, September 9th, the long-awaited trial of Laurie Shaver in Claremont, Florida begins. Now, Laurie is facing trial for the murder of her husband, Michael or Mike Shaver. This trial is almost 9 years in the making. Authorities believe that Mike was killed in November of 2015. And here we are this many years later, and trial is finally set to start in less than a week. So I will be in Claremont every day for trial, and it's going to be really interesting. There's a lot of craziness with this one, and I'm anxious to see the jury's reactions when they hear some of what's coming. Mike's family and friends and loved ones have waited a long time for this, but there are some curveballs that the defense has already thrown, and there are a lot of twists and turns on this one. I first heard about this case when one of my longtime best friends since college told me about it. Her kids went to school with Laurie and Mike's kids, and she and her husband became friendly with Laurie and her new husband. And look, we're from the country, y'all. We like to do all the country things, and Laurie does too. So they became friends, and they let the kids kind of hang out while they rode four-wheelers and shot guns and drank beer around the new fire pit. She told me about Laurie's previous husband that was either missing or had left, but she said that the details were always kind of weird and flaky. And then it turns out he was found buried under the fire pit in the backyard, the same fire pit that my friend had sat around with them. But there seemed to be some kind of holdup. And then finally, 2.5 years later, there was finally an arrest. She calls me one day and said, "You are never going to believe what happened." So it got my attention. This case got me digging, and I am going to do some future episodes on it in the podcast. But I wanted to go ahead and do a video to introduce y'all to everything because this has been a long time coming, and I want to give you all of the information that you have, what we know about everything going into the trial of the state of Florida versus Laurie Shaver. On February 16th, 2018, Scott Amatuccio, who had been friends with Mike Shaver since 8th grade, contacted the sheriff's department to tell them that he was worried about his longtime close friend, Mike Shaver. Scott said that he hadn't seen Mike in more than 2 years, and neither had his family, and he wanted someone to go out to the property to check on him. Now, look, I know what you're thinking. How do you go more than 2 years before you report someone missing? But Mike's family lived out of state, and they hadn't seen Mike or talked to him on the phone, but they had received a few messages and texts saying that he needed to get away and he wanted to be left alone, and told people don't bother him. And his Facebook page would occasionally show sporadic updates. Now, after a while, when he still hadn't come back around or contacted them, Mike's friends and family knew that something was up. His family was apparently having issues getting the police to consider Mike missing. But when Scott Amatuccio called, he kind of went a different route. He asked them to go do a wellness check. He said that Mike had 2 kids that he adored, and it was not in his character to just get up and leave and never come back. He told authorities that the totality of the circumstances surrounding Mike's disappearance was suspicious, and he felt like Mike's wife, Laurie Shaver, was not being truthful about his whereabouts. Laurie had given some kind of vague story about what happened, saying that Michael had left in a black SUV, but Scott knew that all of Mike's possessions were still at his house afterward. Scott said that there were text messages to Michael's boss saying that he, quote unquote, quit his job, and texts saying that his tools should just be given away. And Scott knew that that's not like him. There were posts on Mike's Facebook, but he believed that it was Laurie pretending to be Mike. Also, there was a concrete slab and fire pit that suddenly appeared on the property after Mike went missing. And Laurie got remarried pretty quickly, which he also found suspicious. So Scott reached out to the family, and they agreed. They knew that Mike would never just leave his kids to start a new family like Laurie had claimed he had. So they decided that Scott should call the authorities and report him, and that's exactly what he did. The sheriff's department showed up at the Shaver property and spoke to Laurie. She told them that Mike had left the family and was in Georgia. She said that the last time that she was at the house was more than a year before that, in September of 2014. The couple had been in an argument that got out of hand, and each accused the other of pulling out a gun that they had to wrestle away. The fight ended with Mike being charged with battery, and Laurie said that after his arrest, he came to get some belongings and left. She said that the last time that she actually saw Mike was at a custody trial in 2015. Laurie was cooperative. She let the deputies come in and search the property, no problem. That is, until they asked about the concrete slab over the fire pit. They asked if they could bring a cadaver dog to conduct a sniff of the slab, at which point Laurie promptly told them to leave the property. So where was Mike Shaver? Deputies started investigating and found that he had no current cell phone, his Florida driver's license, U.S. passport, and pilot's medical certificates had all expired. He also didn't have a driver's license in any other state, plus his car had been repossessed in February of 2016. And court paperwork for a civil lawsuit for non-payment of a credit card had gone unserved on him because he was unable to be located. Everyone that authorities contacted looking for Mike said that they hadn't seen him since the end of 2015. He was entered into the NCIC as a missing person, and the investigation into his disappearance began. On March 9th, 2018, just 3 weeks after the wellness check, deputies returned to the Shaver property with a search warrant for cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. The skeletal remains of Mike Shaver were unearthed, and they were only 3 feet below the concrete slab on the fire pit. It would be another 2.5 years before Laurie Shaver was arrested, and as police were cuffing her, she told them they have it all wrong. She said that she did not kill Mike Shaver, and she still sticks to that to this day. Going into the trial, Laurie still maintains her innocence, and her attorney says that there isn't any direct evidence against her. So then how did we get here? And do they have the wrong person? Let's take a look at the history between Laurie and Mike Shaver, what led to his death, what's happened since, and what evidence there is that Laurie could be responsible. Mike and Laurie started dating when they were only 13 years old. Childhood sweethearts from New York State would grow up to get married, have kids, and live their fairy tale. Unfortunately, it's never that simple, is it? Mike and Laurie moved around a little bit, eventually settling in Central Florida, purchasing a home on 5 acres in Clermont, Florida, a little over 20 miles west of Orlando. It's hard to pinpoint the exact time that their marriage began to deteriorate, but Laurie's infidelity seemed to play a major role in that. Mike said that the reason that they had left New York was because he caught Laurie trying to have an affair with a man that they knew named Matt. A fresh start hundreds of miles away didn't help Laurie's wandering eye, though. For a lady who worked from home, she had no problem finding men to partake in her extramarital activities, causing problems in her own marriage as well as multiple others. There was also domestic violence in the home. Now, this is a sensitive subject for a lot of us who have been through domestic violence, but women like Laurie Shaver are the reason that so many of us have struggled to come forward. Laurie's allegations about Mike's abuse have little to no credibility for multiple reasons. First off, some people have heard Laurie herself admit that she is the aggressor. Second, multiple witnesses have seen Laurie be the aggressor. And third, she continued to accuse Mike of harassment, stalking, and abusive behavior, giving detailed, fabricated stories to friends and family, even after Mike was dead. According to a report from the U.S. National Institutes of Health, people who make these fake allegations are primarily motivated by emotional gain, and most false allegations are used to cover up other behavior. Makes sense with this one. For most of 2014, it's hard to tell when Mike and Laurie were together and when they considered themselves separated. There seemed to be some back and forth, and things weren't going great. There was a time when it all got to be too much for Mike. In messages that Mike sent to Laurie's sister, Alicia, he tells her about having to move to Florida because of Laurie trying to have an affair in New York. He says that he also just found out that Laurie had what he described as a full-blown affair with her boss. He also mentions that Laurie is now with the guy that sold them their truck, who Mike knows also happens to be married. Mike spoke to the man's wife, who informed him of some violent felonies from his past. Now, this infuriates Mike, and he tells Alicia that he's hiring a private investigator. And if the background check on the man comes back to show that this is true, he said he's going to remove the kids from Laurie's custody. Alicia's response in this conversation is basically to gaslight Mike. She tells him that he needs to think about the kids, not himself, and tells him that he needs to step up and be a good dad, which she says means not taking the kids from Laurie. But she says that he wouldn't be successful in doing that anyway. Mike responds, telling Alicia that's not what he's trying to do.
Brandi just popped in the chat to tell us that the stream has hit 30K. Yay! Yay, Brandi! I wish that there was like confetti or something I could hit. I think I have like 355 subscribers on my channel. But I'm a totally different thing. I don't deep dive into cases and stuff like Brandi does. She spends a lot of time getting these videos and researching cases. And that's why we're all learning about this case together, because I haven't had a chance to watch the video yet. And what better time to watch and learn than right before the trial starts during jury selection. So we already watched the news clips and now we're watching the recap. So Brandi, very happy for that. That's amazing. And can't wait for you to hit 60,000 because you've reached this so quickly. All right, so let's keep watching the video, which is one of the reasons why her channel has grown so quickly, because you see how good these videos are.
He relays the information that he got from the wife of Laurie's newest fling about him being abusive and having multiple violent felonies and a bad temper. He also tells her, look, if the background check comes back clean, then it turns out not to be true, then he said he'll be okay with that. But Mike tells Alicia that if the kids are in danger, they will be removed, and tells her that the kids are the only thing that he cares about. Alicia responds by saying, give me a break. She said that affairs don't put kids in danger, and if he tries to remove them, it's only to get back at Laurie. Alicia said that her sister would never put the kids in danger. But how true is that based on her behavior? July was a mess for the Shavers. On July 19th, Laurie called the police after a night-long argument. She said that it got so heated that Mike had punched the dresser, and then she says that he turned and came towards her when his friend, who was there, stepped in between them. That's when she called 911. Mike left the house and police made contact with him out on Highway 33 that evening. The following night, Laurie called the police on Mike again. She said that Mike was in the home trying to remove the TVs. He tore apart the bed and started yelling at her, and she said that he was verbally abusing her. She said that she was trying to be civil and allow him to gather his things. She said that she asked him repeatedly to leave, and when he yelled at her, she told him that if he didn't leave, she was going to call 911. She said that at that point, he came towards her, called her a bitch, told her that he hoped that she died, and made a comment that he should just be done with all of this and just end it. Laurie said that she called 911 and Mike left. And when the police arrived, she said that there were dead roses on her front doorstep. Laurie had an anonymous friend and her sister write a letter in support of a restraining order against Mike. The friend's letter was all based on information that Laurie had relayed. Things that Mike was too attached to Laurie and that she had tried to leave him, but he threatened self-harm, so she had to take him back. The friend also suggested in the letter that Mike could benefit from therapy. She didn't say anything about Laurie's therapy, though. Alicia's letter in support of her sister also mentioned Mike's attachment to Laurie. She said that his need to be connected to her has progressed over the years, and she says that he doesn't even trust Laurie to do things with her sister alone. This jealousy, she says, is unfounded, because she says the reality of Laurie being able to seek a relationship outside of her marriage would be impossible. I guess she meant aside from all of those other relationships outside of her marriage that she had. After reading this, I can't imagine why Mike didn't trust Laurie alone with her sister. Laurie also wrote her own note to the court with a list of reasons why she wanted a restraining order. She mentioned that one night they were separated when Mike came there around 2 a.m. to spend the night. She said that she let him stay, but changed the alarm code the next day. She also mentioned Mike ruining her reputation by sending messages telling people about her infidelity. Laurie claimed that there was a long history of mental and obsessive behavior, and that when she tries to leave, he threatens to ruin her life and wears her down so that she has to go back. The documents are different than most of the ones that I've seen when someone's requesting a restraining order. Some of it actually comes across as bitterness about things during an argument as opposed to legitimate concerns for safety. Like she talks about how Mike tried to ruin things with her new boyfriend by talking to his ex and saying that Mike was going to leave a bad review on the website about the car salesman sleeping with his wife, hoping to get him fired. She says that Mike told her that he doesn't hate anyone as much as he hates her, and that if he could shoot anyone, it would be her. She also says that Mike told her that if he catches her with another man in the home, he will kill him. And she says that he removed her gun from the house that was bought for her, leaving her with no self-defense. That, along with the 2 calls that she had made to police within that week, were all listed as she wanted a restraining order against Mike. She also asked for temporary child support for the kids, along with ordering Mike to get treatment or counseling. Now, all of this was apparently for nothing, because a few days later...
Would you guys still buy a car from a dealership that that has a review that the salesman slept with the guy's wife. I don't know that I would.
Later, Laurie filed to dismiss the injunction, and that was it. The allegations may have been coming from Laurie, but according to Mike's coworkers, the abuse was coming from her as well. Mike's friend and coworker Corey remembered Mike came to work sometime around this time period with several bruises on his face and chest and arms. She said that Laurie had gotten irate and blew up about something and began punching him with closed fists. Said that he didn't fight back to defend himself because it wasn't worth it. Corey remembers another time that Mike said that Laurie had gotten mad and threw something at him, missed, and the item went through the kitchen window. In early August, Laurie crashes her truck into a tree, totaling it with both kids in the car. She wasn't charged with a DUI, although those that knew her say that she had been drinking when the accident happened and that both kids sustained injuries, and Laurie did as well. Laurie pled guilty to careless driving, and her new boyfriend was able to sell her another truck. Police were back at the Shaver home on September 4th after Laurie called 911 about another fight with Mike. The officer said that he was able to determine through his investigation that a verbal argument escalated when Laurie threw a vase into the sliding glass door, which resulted in Mike then grabbing her by the arms and pushing her into the wall. From there, the argument led to the bedroom where firearms were removed from the nightstands, and each of them said that the others pulled theirs first. Laurie says that Mike grabbed his gun, and then they struggled with it, causing Mike to be struck in the head with the firearm. But Mike says that Laurie grabbed her gun, saying that she was going to end it all now. When he wrestled it away from her, he said that she then grabbed his gun, which he also was able to get away from her. Laurie ran into the living room, and Mike unloaded both of the guns. He then followed her into the living room and cornered her, but she ran around him, grabbing the guns that Mike had just unloaded. She hit him in the head with one gun and then threw the other at him, missing and hitting the entertainment center. Their scuffle left some marks. The entertainment center was damaged, and Laurie had multiple lacerations on her hands and arms, and visible bruising apparently on her biceps and on the right side of her back. And Mike had a laceration on his head from the gun. Laurie took off with the kids and called the police. They told her to pull over, so she pulled into a Target parking lot where they were able to make contact with her. When they arrived at the house, Mike was sitting on the back porch. He told officers that it turned violent so fast. He didn't deny grabbing Laurie by the arms. He said that he probably did it to calm her down. The officer said in his report that he couldn't determine who committed the actual assault. Mike's sister said that if both Mike and Laurie were arrested, the kids would have been placed with CPS, and she said that Mike didn't want that, so he told the police to just take him. He was arrested and charged with domestic battery and transported to Lake County Jail without incident. Police took both handguns, and it would be about 9 months before Laurie's gun would be returned, but they released Mike's back that same night. The following day, Mike was released from jail, and his friend, Robert Mercado, drove him to the house to gather some of his belongings. Robert said in a statement that Laurie became enraged and threw the handgun at him. She files another injunction against him the following week, but drops it 11 days later. Mike signed up for a year-long intervention program for the charge, and he completed it in half the time. Not surprisingly, Laurie's new fling didn't last. 2 truck sales and 2 fractured marriages later, the man broke things off with Laurie and began to repair things with his wife. Laurie didn't take the news well, and Mike was there to try to calm her down. She was threatening to kill herself, so she was so uncontrollable, Mike even tried to call the guy, asking him to come over for help. The man heard Laurie screaming in the background, and he didn't want anything to do with that. The man's wife didn't either, because on September 19th, she actually filed papers requesting a restraining order against Laurie, citing repeated violence. Things with Laurie had never been worse, and Mike ended up moving out of the house that he had purchased earlier that year and moved into an airplane hangar. Laurie was dating someone, which comes as a surprise to 0% of the population. But life was moving on. Mike had a job at an airplane hangar working on the P-52 Mustang, a plane that he took a lot of pride in and a job that he truly enjoyed. He was still working full-time at Disney as a monorail technician. It was here at Disney where he met a woman named Kendall Davidowski. Mike and Kendall started dating in November of 2014. And while Laurie saw no problems with her dating other people, both now and while her and Mike were still together, she wasn't going to allow Mike to have a girlfriend. As soon as she caught wind of Mike being happy, she knew that she had to put an end to that quick. Kendall said that Laurie began to use Mike's children as a pawn to get what she wanted. She witnessed phone arguments between Mike and Laurie where Laurie would tell him that he would never see his kids again. On nights that Mike was planning to stay at Kendall's house after work, he would always drive to the hangar first, just to make sure that Laurie wasn't following him. Laurie's intimidation wasn't just toward Mike, though. During their brief relationship, Laurie constantly sent Facebook messages to Kendall, harassing her to leave Mike and threatening to expose Kendall to her family as a homewrecker. Ironic, right? Laurie would hurl personal insults at Kendall, even going so far as to mention her grandmother's name specifically, and calling Kendall's mom out of state at 3 a.m. one time, asking for Kendall. Sometime around February or March of 2015, Mike called Kendall while they were on the way to work and told her to park somewhere.
Why are you getting the families involved? That's a bit much. Like, y'all need to chill with that. Yes, where's Chloe? Yes, so it's Brandi's friend was friends with the defendant or was their college roommate or something like that, and had actually been at the house and sat around that fire pit, unfortunately. But calling someone's mom at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's insane. And talking about somebody's grandma and all that, they've done nothing. Don't bring people's families into it. That's too much. That's that's like what somebody in high school would do.
Where other than her normal lot because Laurie was on the way to Disney with a gun. Laurie created multiple fake Facebook profiles and sent friend requests to Kendall. And in April of 2015, she contacted Disney's HR department and filed a complaint against Kendall using pictures from her Facebook. Kendall said that there were never any issues between her and Mike, other than the ones that Laurie caused. But Laurie's incessant harassment became too much for Kendall. She became fearful and she was scared to lose her job if Laurie called HR again, trying to get her fired. So in May of 2015, Laurie got her way. Kendall broke things off with Mike. 6 months later, he would be dead. The back and forth of their relationship continued. Mike was seen by neighbors outside on their property shooting guns that May. Within a month or so, he was contacting authorities because Laurie had taken the kids to New York to see her family, and he didn't want the kids to leave the state with her. Then, by August, they filed for an LLC together, Sunny State Farm, LLC, with Laurie listed as the registered agent and Mike listed as other. 1 month after registering their LLC, Laurie's at the park where she meets a man named Jeremy Townsend, but he goes by Jay. Jay was at the park sitting on the park benches while his son played on the playground. Laurie came over and spoke to him, commenting about him being there alone. The following day, they see each other again. Just like that, Laurie's next affair begins. Jay Townsend was a married man, but marriage was never something that deterred Laurie from pursuing her next fling. Not her own marriage, and certainly not somebody else's. It was early fall, and while she became infatuated with a new man, Mike was working, spending time with his kids, and making time to do fun things with his friends, like hanging out and riding four-wheelers. November 7th of 2015, Florida Flywheelers Tractor Show is happening in Fort Meade. Fort Meade is about an hour and a half from Claremont, but it's worth the drive to make a family day out of it. The tractor show is a huge 4-day event. The gates open at 8 a.m. and families come from all over to see antique tractors and cars. There's a swap meet with dealers and vendors, and a tractor parade, which seems to be a favorite with the kids. Mike had plans to meet his friend and coworker Frank Merritt at the show. Mike was going to bring Laurie and the kids, and Frank was bringing his wife. The event lasts until 4, with the tractor parade as the day's finale. But Frank said that Laurie and Mike didn't seem to be getting along, so they left the event early. That was the last time that anyone, other than Laurie Shaver, ever heard Mike Shaver's voice or saw Mike Shaver live. Frank decided to text Mike the next day to check on him, but he got no response. He tried again the following day, and this time received a response that said that he was quitting work to save his marriage. He also told him to keep his tools, he wouldn't be picking them up. The next day, Tuesday, November 10th, Mike was scheduled to work, but didn't call and didn't show up. Mike's boss, John Borglum, said that Mike was a reliable employee. He was in line to become foreman, and he never missed work without calling in. John texted Michael 2 days later and received the following response. Quote, "I'm having issues at home. In Georgia right now. Just fire me or I'll quit. I will not be returning anytime soon." End quote. Laurie messaged her sister Alicia on Wednesday, saying that Mike had left yesterday, packed his stuff and went to the airport. She told her supervisor a different story a couple weeks later, saying that she had been getting child support from Mike, but he was now in jail for non-payment after losing his job, although Laurie had never actually attempted to file for child support. By Friday the 13th, Mike's friends were starting to get worried, so Frank went by the house to check on him. Laurie told him that Mike had left and gone to Georgia after they got into a fight about another woman's number being in his phone. Frank saw that Mike's car was still at the house, though, so he asked Laurie how Mike could have gotten somewhere. Laurie said that Robert Mercado had picked him up and driven him to Georgia. But Robert was interviewed, and he said that never happened. On Monday, Laurie messages her sister, talking about the weekend. She said that she did tons of yard work and cleaned up outside. 2 weeks pass, and nobody has seen Mike. He had plans with his friend, Robert Mercado, over the Thanksgiving break, but when Robert messaged Mike, he received a response to leave him alone and not bother him. Going forward, friends and family will try again, but it's usually either ignored or it'll be a response just like this one. There was one to his sister in January saying to leave him alone like they have his whole life. There was one to his niece in September saying that he doesn't have a family anymore. He doesn't know who she is and stop messaging him. It was later noted in court documents that Laurie wouldn't have recognized his niece's maiden name, but Mike obviously would. About 3.5 weeks after Mike goes missing, Laurie begins trying to sell off all of his belongings, his firearms, tools that he used to make his living, his car, home, and property, and pretty much anything else that she could sell. Joseph Bray, the owner of JB Guns in Bushnell, Florida, overheard Laurie selling one gun to the owner of an audio store nearby. He talks to Laurie about what she has and makes plans to go out to her property to buy some of the remaining firearms. Joe goes to Laurie's home to meet her and purchases 9 firearms total from Laurie, including 2 .28 caliber revolvers. Also reload equipment, firearm cleaning supplies, all of this for just $1,000. Joe said that Laurie was home alone when he was there and told him that the guns had belonged to her husband, but that her husband had left and she hadn't seen him or heard from him, didn't know where he was. She said that she considered all of the firearms hers now and she wanted to sell them. She told him that Mike was an aircraft mechanic and she had sold his aircraft mechanic tools the previous day for $1,000. She offered to sell him Mike's car, which was in the yard, without a title, and his tractor. She also said that the house and the property were for sale for $150,000. Joe thought it was unusual that a man would leave behind all of his possessions, including several firearms and expensive work tools. He later saw Laurie on TV in March of 2018 and recognized her and the property. Laurie did end up trying to sell the house and she found a buyer, but she didn't realize that she couldn't sell it without Mike's signature. So she stayed there. She never was able to sell Mike's car either, and it was repossessed from the property in February of 2016 for non-payment. While Laurie's busy selling off her husband's belongings, the relationship with her boyfriend is still progressing. Jay's wife works at the school, so while she was working during the day, Jay would make trips to Laurie's for an afternoon visit. He said that the first time that he went to Laurie's was sometime in December. Laurie had been wearing her favorite jeans, and he noticed a stain on the thigh. He asked if the stain was blood. He said that Laurie changed the jeans and never wore them again. The relationship between Jay and Laurie continued, with him making these hour-long visits to see.
You kept the jeans just because they're your favorite jeans? Come on. You can go get other jeans. I have a favorite kind of jean, but like I could go buy more of them. Like that's clear. Yeah, she's not, doesn't seem very smart. All of that's very suspicious. And thank you everybody for the memberships and super chats. You guys are so sweet. Brandi has reached 30,000. It's amazing. Her channel has grown so fast. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Breeze Dog. And if I miss you, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep up on on 2 different channels. I'm dual streaming, and honestly, I'm not totally with it this morning. The weather here is changing, and it's, you know, getting into fall, so it's cool right now, so it's not as dry. I mean, it's not as moist. It's dry, and it's hurt my sinuses, so I got a little headache going on, so I apologize if I'm extra slow. Yeah, don't unalive somebody in your favorite jeans. Yeah, that's, you would think. That's just, yeah, oh, the slab was dumb, the jeans are dumb, and I don't know, like allowing the kid to confess. I feel like I don't have children, okay? I don't have kids. I have my pets, but I feel like a parent, even if the child did it, the parent would want to take responsibility so the child doesn't spend the rest of their life in prison. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, parents out there, what would you do? Would you let your kid take the blame if they, even if they, you know, they actually did do it? I don't know. I feel like I would sacrifice that for my kid. Yes, so we're waiting for court to finish the jury selection, and then we'll be streaming. So we're going to finish this video, and then we're going to look out, and worst case, we'll end the stream, and then we'll come back when court is live again. So we'll get it figured out. And I have the streams for the rest of the week scheduled. It'll be scheduled at 8 a.m., but we'll see what court does. So Yeah, I mean, I'm in Texas, so last year it was over 100 degrees during this time of year, so I am so happy that it's actually turning into fall. And it was 60 degrees when I woke up this morning, so I'm very happy. All right, let me read some of the chat. There's no way, Virginia Little says, there's no way a caring mom would let their child live with something like this. This woman only cares about herself. Cynthia says, honestly, I think Laurie asked her daughter to take the blame and lie for her. I don't think it was the daughter coming forth on her own. That's all definitely very possible. And Butterflies and Alibis says, exactly, if my child shot someone to protect me, I would 100% take the blame. Thank you, Virginia. I am happy to be here too. Yes. Sorry, I always forget that I am in Central Time, DMB. Yes, so I'm Central. So sometimes I forget when I say a time for Eastern, it's actually, an hour difference. So we'll see. We'll see what the court is scheduled for. I am totally flexible and we'll work around it. So, but Brandi is there live and sitting in court right now. All right, let's go back to this video.
See her at her house about 2 or 3 times a week. To Jay, it was just physical. He was married. He was not planning on changing that. But to Laurie, she apparently thought it was more. She even got a heart with his name tattooed in her most private of areas. Laurie wanted Jay to leave his wife, and toward the end of February 2016, it became a big argument between them. There was a text argument that actually went on for about 3 days where Laurie confronts Jay, angry that he's wearing his wedding ring, that he's not getting divorced, accusing him of lying to her about his whereabouts, and asking, "Are you in love with her?" referring to his wife. It was during this 3-day argument that Jay's wife, Vanessa, began receiving Facebook messages from the Facebook account of Mike Shaver. But she didn't see them. They went into a different folder, and she wasn't notified that they had been sent. By April, Laurie was tired of waiting. Jay wasn't leaving his wife, and his wife wasn't checking her Facebook messages from Mike Shaver's account. So Laurie decided to take it into her own hands. She ordered flowers from a website called FromYouFlowers.com, and she scheduled them to be delivered to Jay's wife, Vanessa, at the school where she works. The flowers were paid out of Laurie's checking account, but the delivery said it was from Mike. At 3:18 a.m. on February 11th, Vanessa receives another Facebook message from Mike Shaver's Facebook account, telling her that her special delivery will be arriving today. Hope to finally hear back from her, and a flower arrangement emoji. Later that day, flowers are delivered to Vanessa. It was her and Jay's wedding anniversary. But instead of opening the envelope to a loving anniversary message from her husband, she opens it up to a note that reads, "Roses are red, violets are blue. My wife is a whore, and your husband is too. Sorry about this. Check your Facebook messages. We need to talk. Mike." Vanessa opens the messages from Mike Shaver's Facebook account. She is sent texts and explicit photos that were shared between Jay and Laurie, which she's told came from a spy app that Mike placed on Laurie's phone. She's given a phone number, which she tries to call. There's no answer, but the number texts her back right away, claiming to be Mike. The phone number that Vanessa was texting is not the phone number that Mike Shaver used. The phone number was actually registered to Laurie and was only active for a week or so, and then the number was changed again. That number that was changed to was used by Laurie after that until sometime in 2018. It's obvious that the purpose of this was to let Vanessa know about the affair with Jay so that she would leave him and then Laurie could have him all to herself. It didn't quite work out the way that Laurie wanted it to, though. At one point, when Vanessa said that she may be staying with Jay, the account from Mike Shaver said that he thought that Laurie was pregnant with Jay's child. The account also sent her the name of a good divorce attorney. Vanessa confronted Jay, and he did eventually admit to the affair after he was shown everything that Vanessa had been sent. He eventually broke things off with Laurie and repaired his relationship to his wife, which, according to Laurie's friend Rebecca, made Laurie mad. So spring of 2016 wasn't quite going how Laurie had wanted, but she had other things to keep her busy, like trying to build a new fire pit in her backyard. A month earlier, Laurie had posted a photo of what she called her newest project, saying that she built this fire pit today, and now she just needs to pour concrete. Almost exactly 1 month later, on April 28th, she posts another picture, this time with bags of concrete stacked in the back of a pickup truck, with the caption, "Cement. It's going in the area around the fire pit I built." And there were other things to keep her busy.
Why are you posting so much evidence? Why does everybody need to know that you're doing that? Like, just, I don't post everything that happens in my house. Should I? Like, I did some stuff in my backyard. Should I have posted a bunch of stuff about it? It's like, you definitely don't need to tell people that you're doing stuff in your backyard, especially when you're trying to hide something. I wonder if she burned the jeans too in the fire pit.
Well, Laurie had begun working out at Gold's Gym in Claremont. It was here that she became friends with Rebecca Urbanowski, who worked as a trainer at the gym. With her husband gone and her boyfriend married, Laurie had Rebecca come stay with her for a while. Rebecca's boyfriend, Austin, also worked at the gym, and he would come over and hang out with Rebecca at Laurie's house. Sometimes he would bring his twin brother, Travis. Travis Filmer met Laurie Shaver while she was still involved with Jay, but when Jay decided that he was going to work things out in his marriage, it gave Travis an opening to begin dating Laurie. Travis had a troubled past. He had a felony charge from 2007 and 2008 that led to spending time behind bars. But by the time he met Laurie, those close to him say that he was a changed man, working at Real Life Church in Claremont and going to school to be a minister. Laurie and Travis began dating in the spring of 2016, though the exact time is unclear. But by summer, they already had a joint checking account and a honey-do list. Whatever effort was previously made by Laurie to put concrete over the fire pit, it wasn't good enough. In September, Travis rents a cement mixer from Home Depot, and they buy 42 bags of concrete mix. The area in the backyard that Mike had dug out for what was supposed to be a duck pond was now his grave and covered in concrete. Travis and Laurie marked the new concrete with their initials and began making plans for their future. On New Year's Eve, after less than a year of dating, Laurie and Travis got married in a backyard ceremony at the house. Now, legally, Laurie was still married, but she told Travis that she was divorced, and even told Rebecca that Mike was at the courthouse for their divorce hearing, but they kept him in a separate room. They had a small ceremony, just immediate family was present. Court documents say that sometime after the ceremony, an argument began between Travis and Laurie, which caused her to say that she was getting her gun, and she went storming into the house, barricading herself in her bedroom. I was able to talk to one of the family members present who said that Laurie disappeared for a long time. No one could find her, and Travis's mom even got in the car driving down the road to see if she could find her. Eventually, Travis's mom left, and Travis, his brother Austin, and Rebecca ended up finding Laurie in a small room inside of the closet. She had barricaded herself in, gun in hand, and had to be talked down. Looking back, Travis's family wonders if Laurie's conscience got the best of her. She had just had a wedding ceremony, and there was a fire burning in the fire pit, right on top of the husband that she was still married to. Travis told his family that up to that point, that was the worst night of his life. In 2017, it was a fresh start for Laurie and Travis. They found out that they were expecting their first child together and began making preparations for their growing family. In October, Laurie sold her pink .38 caliber gun to one of the neighbors, and in November, Mike Shaver's Facebook showed the first update in a while. His cover photo was changed to a photo of guns. His profile picture was changed a couple months later, on January 2nd, to a group drinking at a bar. Not sure what the significance of the photo is, but a reverse Google image search shows that it was posted the previous day on an Instagram account for a Bloody Mary mix company called Sportsman's Redneck Juice. Laurie gave birth to her first baby with Travis on January 18th of 2018. Less than a month later, Lake County Sheriff's deputies showed up at the house on Sandy Pines Road to do a wellness check on Mike Shaver at the request of a call from his friend, Scott Amatuccio. Laurie was cooperative with police and invited them in the house while she explained that she hadn't seen Mike since 2015, and he hadn't been at the house since 2014. The conversation was abruptly ended, and deputies were asked to leave the property as soon as they made their way out back. One of the deputies noticed that when he walked up to the concrete slab, there was about a 3-foot by 6-foot depression in the slab that was discolored. A second layer of concrete had been poured over that area, but it wasn't smooth, and one deputy said that you could make out the shape of a grave. Laurie had told them that this used to be a chicken coop, and then they were going to make it a duck pond, but it ended up being a fire pit. They asked Laurie if her husband was buried beneath that slab, and Laurie replied, "No, that's ridiculous." The deputies returned 3 weeks later with cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar. News crews swarmed the area as backhoes were brought in and the dogs were led onto the property. They began to tear apart the concrete slab, And just after 5 p.m. that day, a human bone was found. The search continued the following day as they were able to retrieve additional human remains, as well as a tarp, ratchet straps, and a queen-size bedsheet purchased from Kohl's, a store that Laurie frequented based on her bank records. The remains arrived at the pathologist, but it would be 3 more months before they were able to be positively identified. During a second search warrant on the home, Blue Star, which yields a presumptive detection of bloodstains, naked eye, indicated a positive reaction in the track of the sliding glass door leading from the dining area to the porch. The substance ran in a drip-like pattern down the outside of the trailer between the home and the porch. So this, along with apparent hairs that were found in the area, weren't able to give a sufficient amount of DNA for analysis. But swabs from the interior lower track of the sliding door demonstrated the presence of a mixture of DNA consistent with 3 donors, including Laurie Shaver and 2 unrelated individuals, at least one of which is a male contributor. Mike could not be included or excluded as a contributor. Neighbors, some who had long suspected Laurie, were surprised to see Laurie and Travis arrive back home the following day, seeming to have life back to normal. Most of the neighborhood expected Laurie to be arrested once Mike was found buried in the yard. On March 12th, 3 days after the remains were found, but long before they were identified, a postcard with Mike's photograph was mailed from Orlando to Laurie with a handwritten message. "Tell the kids I love them. See you soon. Mike." From November 7th, 2015, until Mike's remains were discovered, Laurie continued to tell friends and family that she had seen and spoke to Mike and that he was stalking and harassing her. There were times that she accused him of things when he was already buried under a concrete slab. In June of 2018, the DNA confirmed the remains to be Mike. Cause and manner of death was homicide by gunshot wound to the back of the head, with a posterior to anterior trajectory, meaning back to front. A single .38 caliber class projectile was recovered from his skull. The time of death was difficult because there was no remaining soft tissue left, but they determined that it had to be several months to several years prior to discovery. No more payments were ever made on the property, and it went into foreclosure. Laurie, ever the victim, blamed it on slander and interference of both law enforcement and the news media. She says if it weren't for everyone else, she could have made her payments. Travis signed a warranty deed for a house about 20 miles north of Claremont, and he and Laurie moved out of the Sandy Pines Road property for good in August. They did, however, abandon their horse in Florida in the summer, leaving neighbors worried and trying to get help for weeks. Animal control was called, along with multiple horse rescues. The horse, a beautiful mare, had been attacked previously by a panther that had come through the neighborhood, so she had some bad scar marks on her hip. She was skinny and petrified of human contact, but was able to be taken in by a local rescue who worked with her and helped her improve each day while looking for her new home. It would take 2.5 years before they finally arrested Laurie Shaver for the murder of her husband. The PCA was signed on September 16th, 2020, and she was arrested the following night. She was able to bond out after spending less than 3 months in jail. Mike's family and friends, plus all the neighbors and people who have had their lives affected by Laurie, have waited day after day, month after month, year after year, waiting for updates in this case. It took 2.5 years for Mike to be labeled as missing, another 2.5 years for Laurie to be arrested, and it has taken another 4 years for it to finally make it to trial. Laurie's relationship with Travis has also started to have issues. They had another child together after leaving Claremont, and Laurie's friend Rebecca married her boyfriend, Travis's twin brother, Austin. But it wasn't one big happy family. Travis's friends and family say that Laurie has isolated him, forced him to cut off communication with his family, even the person who has always been the closest to him, his twin brother. Rebecca, who was Laurie's friend, has now become her sister-in-law, and while many friends would think that that's a great thing, Rebecca has seen who Laurie really is, and having her as a part of the family has been difficult to say the least. Travis family members said that they've tried to show Travis this pattern that Laurie has of manipulating men and isolating them so that they don't have anyone to tell them what she's doing is wrong, but now they're no longer able to communicate with him, and they feel like it's because Laurie isn't allowing it. Laurie's aggression and violent tendencies haven't seemed to go away either. Travis has said that Laurie has punched him in the head on multiple occasions, and she's extremely verbally abusive, something that her previous neighbors have confirmed as well. They used to hear her screaming at Mike. Travis is no longer working at the church, no longer going to school, and no longer planning on being a minister, things that his family said that he was excited about until Laurie entered his life. In July of 2022, he was arrested for domestic battery by strangulation and tampering with a victim or witness. Laurie told police that she woke up to Travis's hands around her neck, and she tried to defend herself by hitting his back and his shoulders. She yelled for her kids and told them to call 911, but Travis grabbed the phones and threw them on the floor. She yelled for her son to call 911 from his room, at which point she said that she had to step between Travis and her son so that he could call. And Travis began yelling and calling him a derogatory word. Travis then walked into their bedroom and punched a mirror, causing a cut in his hand that resulted in significant bleeding. Laurie and Mike's daughter told police that she woke up to her mom screaming her name, so she rushed to the living room and saw Travis with his hands around Laurie's neck. She confirmed that Travis threw their phones and yelled at her brother when he began to call. Travis tells a different version. He said that he came home from work and laid down, face down on the bed. Laurie was lying next to him and began to hit him across the back, at which point he rolled over and grabbed her neck. Officers noted that Laurie didn't have any injuries, but did say that she wanted to pursue charges against Travis. Travis told them that it was Laurie who hit him, and she had been the one hitting him in the past, prior to this incident. They checked and saw Travis's history with 2 prior convictions, and he was placed under arrest. They ended up having to take him to the hospital. Then he went to Lake County Jail. Travis's brother bailed him out the next day, and he went to his mom's house. He looked at his bank account that day and noticed that Laurie had completely drained it and gone on a shopping spree. Laurie made statements during the investigation leading to Travis's arrest, including the fact that Travis said if he spoke to law enforcement, Laurie would go to prison. The body cam caught this on camera. Travis was ordered to take anger management, given 3 years of probation in October of 2022, and applied for early termination after serving half, which was approved in May of this year. This isn't the first thing that Travis has apparently said that has referenced Laurie's potential guilt. The PCA says that investigators talked to Travis, and he said that Laurie told him that Mike wasn't missing. He's just no longer walking this earth. He said that she also told him that something bad happened and that there was a body on the property. According to Laurie's attorney, Travis now denies saying this. The investigator said that this wasn't recorded because Travis would not let them record him at the time, but that it was said in front of 4 officers. In September of 2022, the case took another huge turn when the defense...
Wait, so she tried to blame Travis first, and I guess that didn't work. Okay. So maybe she fabricated the assault so that way she could prove he's violent and then tried to blame him. I don't know. I don't like to speculate, but it's definitely very fishy how all this stuff played out. But the kids were there, so maybe the kids saw some of it. I don't know, but the kids were young and could very easily be, taught to say what they need to say. If you're having problems like that in every relationship, it might be you. It might be you. Right. Why isn't she surprised she doesn't claim the same thing Sarah Boom is claiming, domestic violence? I have no idea. I don't know why she's not trying that. I guess it's easier to blame a 7-year-old. So, you can't be charged at a certain age. I don't know what the cutoff is. I think you can only be charged if you're like 10 or 9. So if she was 7 years old, they couldn't charge her for what she did at 7. I don't think so. I could be totally wrong, but I think. But yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Filed a motion with the court requesting that an expert be appointed to evaluate Mike and Laurie's daughter, who they say wants to confess to her father's murder. They are saying that the daughter admitted to shooting her father in the back of the head while being deposed and said that she did it to stop him from beating her mother. The child, who was 7 years old at the time, and the defense wants an expert to evaluate her and then testify as to whether or not she was being truthful. They're asking that the report from this requested expert be kept confidential and only for the defense to see. The court denied the motion, saying that the defense failed to show any strong and compelling evidence establishing a need for evaluation, and in fact said that the defense is actually seeking an evaluation to be used as a potential bolstering of the child's potential testimony. The court also stated that having an expert evaluate the child and then testify as to her truthfulness is not appropriate under the law. And asking that the report be kept confidential and only for the defense also isn't appropriate since the defense is not the child's attorney. There's an attorney ad litem for that. The defense attorney has no attorney-client relationship and therefore no rights to a confidential report. The defense fires back, saying that this isn't a compelled exam and not allowing it would mean that the state is obstructing justice. It was denied, and another motion to reconsider was filed on May 8th, and that one was also denied 10 days later. There are multiple problems with Mike and Laurie's daughter's alleged confession, aside from the legal ones mentioned here. First, the story is unclear and possibly changed over time. There are some different versions floating around, and one that includes the child getting the gun and somehow shooting her father in the head, and Laurie covering it up, and then the most recent one that the man that Laurie was having an affair with at the time, Jay, showed up after the child shot Mike, and then he shot him again, and then told them to leave while he took care of things, supposedly burying Mike on the property without Laurie knowing. Then Laurie just deciding to pour concrete in that exact area, of all spots on the entire 5-acre property, right over where Mike was buried. In a pretrial hearing on August 22nd, the child's confession is brought up again when the state asked the court to exclude Travis's boss, Adam Narvaez, from testifying that the child told him this as well. The girl approached Travis's boss, who is also involved in the church that they attend. Apparently this was at a function at his house, and he had a conversation with her while standing in his hallway, saying that she had shot her dad in the back of the head and that he was abusive to Laurie, and that Laurie's newest affair at the time, Jay Townsend, came in, shot him again, and then took care of the body. The judge ordered that this will not be allowed in at trial. I don't know how likely it is that Jay would involve himself in something like this for someone that he was only interested in really just sleeping with. He had only been seeing Laurie for a couple months and would probably have been home with his wife on the weekend like normal, not at his mistress's house with her husband and kids. Now, these are, of course, just behaviors. That's not evidence. But Jay and his wife were also very cooperative with police, handing over more than 600 pages of messages, plus the card and envelope from the flower delivery and basically anything else requested. Another 5 months of messaging, and nothing was ever even hinted to that could imply that he knew about this or had some kind of involvement in anything. But more importantly, the pathologist has said that there was no evidence of 2 gunshot wounds. There's only one. And also, there's no evidence of a sharp angle of entry. The little girl, who just turned 7, would be firing from a much lower angle than an adult woman. If the bullet is fired from a sharper angle, for example, from closer to the ground where a child would be firing it, it's more likely the bullet entrance will be oval and there would be excessive chipping of part of the skull. And there's none of that. And finally, on the day that Laurie was arrested, the kids and Travis were with Travis's mom. The child told Travis's mom that she didn't remember Mike. She had just turned 7 when Mike was killed, and she was 12 when Laurie was arrested. If she said that she didn't remember Mike, and 1 year later she's allegedly confessing to shooting him, then it seems that those memories or that story must have somehow been planted over the course of that year. And if that's true, then Laurie's diabolical manipulation tactics are even more disturbing. The defense also has another phase of their strategy, trying to paint Mike as a violent, abusive man. They filed a motion to include prior bad acts of Mike, who they referred to as a quote-unquote alleged victim. Really? They include the accusations that Laurie had previously made in her request for previous injunctions, the same injunctions that she changed her mind on and voluntarily dismissed when she calmed down. But the defense says that Laurie just let one of those injunctions dissolve because she wanted to avoid ongoing pressure of Mike, and the other one she just dismissed because of emotional pressure that Mike had placed on her. Then the accusations get wild. She now claims that between 2009 and 2015, Laurie says she was repeatedly and forcibly raped and drugged either by Mike or with the consent of Mike. Such events would occur frequently with force upon Laurie, and often having drugged Laurie prior to the commission of such crimes. They allege that Mike would direct that Laurie allow others to touch her in an inappropriate manner and against her will. This supposedly happened in Florida and in Reno, and despite repeated pleas to stop such events, the defendant found herself berated and physically forced to comply with such demands. She also says that he would lock her in the closet against her will as a consequence of not following each and every request made. Then, she says that Mike boarded up the house in 2014 and held the family against their will, threatening to burn the house down with the family trapped inside. They say that he struck her in the head with a cast iron skillet and even controlled what and how much she could eat, striking her against her will should she violate her demands. The court ruled that all of these allegations are hearsay and based on statements of Laurie's that are self-serving, so they can't be offered as evidence to prove truth of the matter. And they can't introduce her statements as evidence of the victim's character. So anything that's brought in must be done through admissible testimony and evidence. Laurie's lawyers are allowed to introduce her petition for a restraining order during trial, but if they do so, it must also include the petition that Laurie filed days later to terminate that order. Here's why I don't believe anything she says. Laurie has continually shown to be the aggressor in the relationships, and she has even admitted to people that she's the aggressor. Even in her current relationship with Travis, he and others close to them have said that Laurie is abusive and controlling, notorious for punching men in the head. Mike's coworkers and friends have witnessed Laurie's aggression and outbursts and have seen the bruising and injuries from Laurie on Mike. Multiple witnesses told investigators that Mike would often take the blame so that the kids wouldn't be without their mother. And we know for a fact that Laurie continued to lie about Mike's abuse and harassment long after he was already dead and buried in the backyard. She has no credibility. There's nothing that she can say that any of us can believe, and women like her are the reason that so many women who are actual victims of domestic violence have trouble being believed when they finally get the courage to come forward. Laurie used 911 and the law as a way to punish and keep control over Mike, not as a way to help protect herself and her children from him. Mike is the one who needed protection, but unfortunately, it's too late. However, it's not too late to protect his honor and good name. Mike was a good man, and those who knew him describe him as funny, loyal, honest, and hardworking. He cared about his kids and his family and loved making people laugh. He didn't deserve what happened to him, and Laurie didn't deserve him. The defense is expected to bring in an expert to show that there's no digital data provided by the state that links Laurie to being the one who drafted any of the messages or Facebook updates. And look, that's true. She didn't have to use her fingerprint or fancy eyeball scanner to identify herself before updating Mike's profile, or before sending people messages pretending to be him, or before using his credit card after his disappearance. But there's more than enough evidence to draw a conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt. The last time that Laurie ever called Mike's cell phone was November 3rd. Prior to this, she called his phone multiple times every week. After November 9th, Mike's debit card was never used again for any in-store or in-person purchases. On November 19th, and again on November 23rd, online purchases from Wish were made using Mike's card. The receipts confirm that the orders consisted of female lingerie and clothing items, and both of those orders were shipped to a recipient named Laurie Shaver at 9850 Sandy Pines Road in Claremont, with a confirmation email address listed. On November 30th, a check for $2,539 was mailed from Mariner Finance in Leesburg, Florida to Michael Shaver at his home address. On December 11th, the back of that check was endorsed with an unreadable signature, Mike's social security number and cell phone number, and accepting the terms of the loan. On December 14th, the check was deposited into Mike's Chase checking account through an ATM in Claremont. Mariner Finance attempted to contact Mike to collect on this loan, but they were never able to contact him during the next 3 years. Also, when they talked to them, they said that they had never actually spoke to or saw Mike Shaver during the loan process. So the person who secured the loan in his name, deposited it, and then spent it and made cash withdrawals would have to have had access to his secure community mailbox, his social security number, his ATM card for 2 weeks, his PIN number, and know that he wouldn't be around to notice the fraudulent deposit, multiple withdrawals, or packages being shipped to the residence. Between December 14th and December 30th, multiple ATM withdrawals were made along with purchases online and one payment to Sumter Electric Power Company, which is the power company used at the Shaver home. On December 15th, an online purchase was made at Walmart.com for $424.54 using Mike's card. The purchase was for children's items, and it was shipped to a recipient named Laurie Shaver at the Sandy Pines Road address. The total of purchases and withdrawals were more than $2,000, causing Mike's account to be overdrawn by the end of the year. After a few more purchases and fees, the checking account remained overdrawn and was never used again. Before November 9th, his account was almost exclusively debit purchases in person at stores. Afterwards, it was purchases that were online and ATM cash withdrawals, all in Claremont, or shipped to the Shaver residence, not Georgia, where she said that he went. Also, Laurie's friend, Katina Vasquez, said that she saw what she believed was Mike's cell phone at Laurie's house not long after his disappearance, along with his clothing and personal belongings. The messages that were sent from Mike's Facebook to Jay's wife, Vanessa, told her that she would be getting a delivery and put the flower emoji. That delivery of the flowers was paid for with Laurie's bank account. The Facebook updates that were made to Mike's account were often utilizing the same IP address as Laurie's Facebook page updates. Investigators reviewed and compared the IP addresses listed on the activity logs, and they show 13 IP addresses that are identical on both accounts, indicating that the devices used for Facebook activity on both accounts were on the same network. So let the expert give his testimony, and then let the jury use their common sense. The defense also wanted to exclude the mention of any firearms, claiming that since the projectile was too damaged from being in the ground for too long, they weren't able to forensically match it with any specific .38 caliber handgun. So the defense said that they shouldn't mention Laurie having access to firearms. That was denied, obviously. Laurie kept a .38 on her nightstand. Mike also had a .38. Frank Merritt had given Mike his .38, and he was going to be rebluing it for him, and Laurie ended up returning it to him after Mike's disappearance. But it was at the Shaver residence when Mike went missing. There was also another .38 that she sold to Joe Bray, which means that Laurie had access to 4 .38 caliber handguns at the time that her husband, who was found buried in her backyard and was shot and killed by a .38 caliber handgun, she had 4 of them at that time. So yeah, they're not going to tell the prosecution that they can't talk about guns. They also wanted to exclude the opinions of handwriting being forged. Now, this pertains to the postcard that Laurie received right after Mike's remains were found, and also a handwritten card to a Deborah Townsend, not Vanessa, that says, "Roses are red, violets are blue, my wife's cheating on me, your husband is too." And also the forged signature on the back of the check. The judge ruled that there will be no lay witness opinion given on the handwriting, which is standard, but the evidence is allowed in. In March of 2021, Laurie and her attorney, Jeffrey Weggs, make a video that she puts on YouTube in order to raise money for her defense. In the video, her attorney claims that Laurie was dropping kids off at the school when Jay saw the bruises on her from Mike's alleged abuse. Her attorney explains that Jay told Laurie that he could protect her and his military training could help him make a man disappear. He goes on to say that Jay told Laurie that she needed to make a sitting patio in the backyard and told her how much concrete she would need and even assisted her in purchasing the concrete, which is interesting. The first fire pit post was made in March, not long before she and Jay broke things off, but that was 4 months after Mike had gone missing. So it doesn't seem to make much sense. He goes on to say that Travis came along later and put more concrete out there with her. And basically, Laurie was just innocent and didn't know anything about anything. They asked for donations for her defense, and then Laurie is given the opportunity to speak, saying that she doesn't know why she's being targeted. The video closes with Mr. Weggs explaining attorney's fees and again asking for people to reach into their pockets and to help Laurie get out of this mess. There was something that stood out to me in the transcripts of an interview with the investigator in this case. She said that everyone she interviewed, she would ask, "Do you know of anyone that would want to harm Mike?" And that's where it would come up what a great guy Mike was. His family and his friends speak of him warmly. They tell funny stories and share in their grief and hope for justice. On June 30th, 2018, Mike's friend and neighbor hosted a candlelight memorial at her home to honor and remember Mike. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, and team members gathered in remembrance, mourning their loss and celebrating the man that he was. His family has vowed to somehow make sure that his kids know how much Mike loved and adored them, despite what they may have been told by the woman who took him away from them. It has taken 8 years, 10 months, and 2 days from the time that Mike Shaver was last seen alive until the time that his accused murderer is finally set to stand trial. It's taken a long time, but we are all one step closer to justice for Michael Shaver.
Like, I'm almost speechless with all the stuff that the chat keeps moving, with all the stuff that Laurie has done. She's almost like a Black Widow, you know? I knew somebody like that growing up, and they ruined like every person that they dated, and it's so sad to see. And let's remember that you don't know that you're in an abusive relationship immediately. They hide who they really are. They I'm sure you've heard the example, the frog in the boiling pot of water. It starts off slow, and they don't know that they're in that situation. It's very, very sad. Yeah, let me see. Let me see what else we can do while we're waiting. There was the pre-trial that was a few days ago. Well, Mo, I'm sorry that you were in a situation like that, but I'm glad that you're safe, because you really don't know that you're there. And I've witnessed it with some of my friends. I've been through it myself, and I feel like it's extra cruel what she did, because his family didn't know if he was alive or dead for years. And then all this other stuff that she's done. And then she ends up with these other men and ruins their life. And she's making false accusations against, well, against other people and trying to set them up for it. All right, let me see what is here. All right. That is Law and Crime. That's Court TV. I don't know if I can play that, because we played some of the news clips earlier. Let's see. All right, so Law and Crime has a ruling from a few days ago. All right, I got that open. So I'm looking to see what else is out here. Yeah, I don't know if Travis is safe. I hope he is. I hope that because she has extra eyes on him, or on her, that she doesn't do anything stupid. And yes, I agree that Brandi does a great job on the cases, because I had no idea what was going on with this case. I'm trying to see what else there is. Okay, so for now, I'm going to keep looking for some stuff, but I'm going to put on the hearing that was from a few days ago while we're waiting. And I'll see if I can find some other interviews and stuff, because I don't want to just keep looking and staring at the screen while you guys are waiting for that. Let's see. The little Woody, that stuff just cracks me up. Yeah, and so Brandi is there inside the court right now. So you guys will be with me Monday, Tuesday, well, today. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Let's see, what else is there? Is that... All right, so I'm going to start this. And then I'm going to keep looking, okay? Okay. Thanks, Lindsay. I'm trying. And I have a headache, so I'm not fully with it. All right. Nope, that's not the screen I even wanted. Sorry. Do. Singing my song while I look for stuff. Do. Okay. All right, so we'll play this, and I'm going to keep looking for some other stuff. And let me, I need to move myself, so I am... Nope, I'm going to move myself. Do. Over to cover this. There we go. All right, perfect. Save. I'm sorry, Brandi, that I'm moving around your layouts and stuff. I apologize in advance. All right, here we go.
Record on case number 2020 CF 2361, State of Florida versus Shaver. and at this time we'll address the pending motions. Is there any specific order that the parties would like to proceed?
Judge, if we could start with the state's motion only as to the delay in charging.
All right, we'll just proceed in the order listed on the notice of hearing. So number one for the state is a motion in limine as to delay in charging the defendant and decision not to charge all the defendants. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Primarily, I'm going to rely on my motion. I'm sure the court has read it. But there's no question that there are dates are going to be mentioned. The jury's going to know that the remains were found in 2018, and the charging decision based on the date of the information is after that. The focus of the state's motion is to prevent the defense from arguing to the jury or trying to elicit through any detective or witness the reason behind the delay in charging. That information is exclusively within the purview of the state attorney's office and the prosecutor's office. The state has exclusive authority to determine how to charge, who to charge, when to charge. That all lies in our inherent statutory authority. To interject any suggestion of the reason why the defendant was not charged immediately interjects completely irrelevant evidence. It would then introduce a need or requirement for the state to possibly call the prosecutors involved in this case to explain what was going on, when we received information, why we made decisions that we did, all of which are again within the purview of the state attorney's office and not relevant. If that evidence were to be admitted or allowed to be argued, that would in essence put myself, Mr. Camuccio, potentially now Judge Emily Creighton, because she was involved in this case at some point, into the witness list of having to testify and explain those decisions, potential changes in the law which could have impacted the decision to file, and none of which is at all relevant as far as whether or not Ms. Shaver committed these crimes. For the remainder of my argument, or allow my motion.
All right, Mr. Williams, have any objections?
Please support. Judge, I don't agree with that. We wouldn't concur in that. The jury is instructed that the state has power in the investigative process, but the manner in which the case is investigated, the time in which it's investigated, the manner in which it's investigated speaks to the weight of the evidence, the credibility of the evidence in this case, which is fair comment by the defense. To just say, you can't talk about these things, we got providence in this area, it invades the defendant's right to argue the merits of the state's case. Obviously, if the evidence was overwhelming at the very outset, Ms. Shaver would have been charged. So it goes to the weight of the argument that we're able to persuade the jury. It doesn't deal with the powers of the state. You're just invading providence and the privileges of the defense and making fair comment at trial.
All right, Mr. Buxton?
I think Mr. Wicks may have misunderstood the purpose of my motion and my argument. Clearly, the manner of investigation is relevant. My motion was limited and focused solely on preventing the defense from getting up and arguing. It took the state X number of years to charge the defendant, therefore they must even believe she's not guilty, or something to that effect. The questioning or implications of the state's reasons for the delay in charging, not the investigation.
No, I understand it quite clearly. The state's just saying, if you want to deal with time, you can't talk about it. Okay? No, we want to be able to talk about it as to how this
relates to the state's charging decision. Is that correct, Mr. Buxton?
No, not to the charging decision, as to the time. The state has spoken that as to exclude, I think the time it took for them to investigate the case and make the final decision. And the state was saying, well, that would cause us to have to call, for me to have to take the stand, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the evidence is presented to the state at some point. But what law enforcement did, how they investigated it, how long it took them to investigate it, and then deliver it to the state, and how long it took the state to make decisions, those are all fair argument for the defense. The jury, as part of the instructions, is instructed to rely on your common sense and reach in their verdict. That goes to how the manner of the case was investigated, put together, and how much time it took them to reach the decisions that ultimately Laurie Shaver sits here on this information. So those should not be barred from comment, Judge.
All right, anything further? No. For the limited purpose requested by the state, the motion in limine is granted.
And to what extent, Judge?
Regarding the state's filing decision and the timeline that the state took.
Okay.
Now, law enforcement investigating the case and how long that took is a separate issue.
Okay, so we can discuss how long it took law enforcement to investigate. Okay.
All right, we move on to number 2. State's second motion is the motion to strike defendant's notice of intent to rely on business records.
One second, Judge, I'm sorry.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. The next one is what that we're taking up?
Next one on the notice is motion to strike defendant's notice of intent to rely on business records.
Your Honor, Nick Muccio, I'll be arguing this issue. We have had a similar hearing on these specific documents already as it related to Mr. Wiggs's attempts to have the court take judicial notice of the contents of the domestic relations injunction, as well as the state's law enforcement report from the 2014 domestic violence case that they have referenced at various points. I had also filed, because they filed notice of intent to rely on business records certifications to try to get those documents in. I filed motions to strike that because the reports themselves just are not admissible in that fashion. I have supplied a subsequent memorandum of law that specifically references police reports and DCF reports and how the tool of notice of intent to rely on business record certification is improper to get all of that information in, as it is filled with various hearsay and inadmissible evidence. As I stated at the hearing involving their attempts to get this evidence in through judicial notice, I am not saying that they cannot bring up issues of the injunction or the domestic violence arrest from 2014. However, simply putting in reports that are filled with nothing but hearsay is not the way to properly admit that evidence before the court. So I filed the motion to strike the notice of intent to rely on business record certifications, as that is not a proper vehicle to admit reports. Throughout the proceedings of this case, Mr. Wiggs has marked various reports and portions of reports as exhibits for purposes of hearing, and I have repeatedly talked at those times about how that would not be appropriate exhibits for trial, but for purposes of those hearings it was permissible. I am also aware that Mr. Wiggs has attempted to just mark reports and depositions in trials in front of this court, and as attempts to just wholesale put those exhibits in, which is improper. So my memorandum of law, as well as my motion, fully outlines all of the arguments, but that is what the basis of this is.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wiggs.
Please support. Judge, with regards to this, I thought the court has already ruled on this matter as to the arrest of Michael Shaver and spoken about this and ruled on it at this stage. So I don't know if Mr. Camuccio is asking the court to rule on something that's previously been ruled on at this stage. That I'm not certain. I understand that there's a predicate that has to be laid for the introduction of evidence, I'm aware of that, but I believe you've already ruled with regards to Michael Shaver's conviction and the domestic violence issues at this stage. We haven't moved at this stage to seek to introduce any evidence at this stage, but I believe you've already ruled on it, Judge.
Mr. Camuccio, do you want to differentiate between what was ruled on previously and what you're seeking now?
Yes. The previous hearing that we had was the hearing that we dealt with that was titled, Mr. Wigg's titled Reverse Williams Rule. And there was a request for judicial notice of various items in the court file, including the injunction as well as the police reports. And the court had ruled already that those documents could not come into evidence through through judicial notice. We have repeatedly said if witnesses that were actually involved in these incidents were to come forward and state this is what happened, that is the correct way of putting this evidence in before the jury, not just putting in a police report and having that be, as a matter of fact, what happened on that night. This particular filing is because not only were they requesting the court take judicial notice of those documents, they filed notices of intent to rely on business record certification to move in the records from 2014 DR 1502 and 2014 MM 5308. So this motion specifically is saying that they should not be allowed to put in those records as business record certifications based on their notice. And the statute specifically says that if a party files the notice of intent to rely on business record certification, if opposing party has an objection to that, it has to be done before the trial, so that if generally the procedure would be, so if there is an issue with the notice itself, if the party wants to bring in the live witness that would be the business record custodian, they could do so that way, as opposed to finding out in the middle of trial that opposing counsel had an objection to it. My objection is stated that these records are not admissible as business records so therefore the notice of intent to rely on the business record certification are invalid. And my motion talks about how not only is there hearsay, but whether or not the clerk's office is actually the party that actually creates these records and maintains these records. They're not. They just take what is given to them and puts it in court files, so therefore they are not actually producing any of these business records, any of these records that he claims are business records. So yes, we have had a hearing. Yes, there has been determinations that certain areas of the injunction and the county court case are going to be admissible, but not simply by putting in police reports, domestic violence injunction petitions, and things of that nature.
Judge, we didn't intend to do that, but I think if you look in your order, I think it's paragraph 16 and 17 is where you address it. And it states if you can lay a proper predicate. Okay? You'd already ruled on this. The state is just filing this late and now raising it a second time, but you've already ruled on it. You've stated, Judge, if you can lay a proper predicate.
Correct. And that was previously stated, but to the extent that Mr. Camuccio has cited or distinguished the prior ruling from the present request, the motion is granted.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we move on to number 3. And state's third motion is notice of intent to review an evidentiary summary and memorandum of laws attached to it.
Yes, well, yes, Your Honor. This is simply dealing with the various IP records that have been that were compiled from the Facebook records themselves for the courts. So the court is aware the state is intending on admitting the Facebook records both from Michael Shaver and Laurie Shaver. We've had hearings on the relevance of all of those already. It is my intent to put in the entire IP logs of both Laurie Shaver and Michael Shaver Facebook records, so the jury would have access to all of the information. The evidence summary that I've filed that is in compliance with Florida Statute 90.956 simply summarizes some of that information, and it is a permissible tool to help assist the jury in understanding all of the records, but they will also have all of the records themselves, and they're fully able to go through and look and see that, yes, all these IP addresses and times and dates and numbers and all of that matches up. It is a summary, as the rule allows, to allow them to process pages and pages of information, but all of that information will actually be made available to them.
Mr. Wicks? Yes, may it please the court. Judge, we would contest to this, and I bring to the court's attention, I'm going to get the status summary. There's some private notes on it on the top that give the court a summary that deals with stacking inferences again. This goes back to stacking inferences. We addressed this at a hearing, and it was our position that it was impermissible to stack inferences. The state was of the position that it's permissible to just throw everything before a jury. Basically, that Bush had just done away with the concept of stacking inferences. So what the case I gave you deals with is, it's a statement of the law recently announced and the case cited. And that case is Smith versus Carlos, 24 decision. And it goes back and it addresses stacking inferences. And it goes through all the cases we discussed. It goes through Bush, it goes through Knight, it goes through Law, the cases that I relied on. But what it points out is really the state wasn't properly correct, and I wasn't entirely correct as well what I'd represented before the court. What the case did is it said, well, Bush did do away with the concept of stacking inferences, so you go back to the original case where this was addressed, which is Volcker versus Combined Insurance Company of America, 73 Southern 2nd 403, a Florida Supreme Court decision of 54. So that was reinstated by the elimination of Bush. And the court states this within it. The Supreme Court, stacking one inference upon another as a method of establishing an ultimate fact ordinarily should not be indulged in unless the first inference meets a test which may be analogized to the criminal rule concerning circumstantial evidence. And it proceeds thereafter and says, only if the prior or basic inference is established to the exclusion of any other reasonable theory. So the decision declares that basically, yeah, you can stack inferences, but your initial inference that you're going to build on has to be subject to no other reasonable inference. So the state can go and proceed and say, you know, we're going to just build it from there. Of course, then the jury is just told to weigh the credibility of the evidence on their own. There's no special instruction anymore. So now to take their position now that they want to stack an inference, go back to stacking inferences, what they've done is they've taken a summary. And the court has said, yeah, okay, you can use these records, but Judge, they still, just as Mr. Camuccio just stated in the last motion, he said, you still have to lay a proper predicate, Mr. Wiggs. And I said, yeah, I know that, and that's what the judge ordered previously. So you can't take a summary when the facts are of dispute, which they are, okay, digest a bunch of facts into a summary, put it before a jury and say, accept our version of these facts, okay, that's what we want you to use. That would run afoul to the case that I cited before the court previously, which is the Supreme Court decision, Yisrael, and the motion for to exclude the digital data that I cited. That case, you'll recall, Judge, was a case wherein the state prepared a document through the Department of Corrections as to the release date of the defendant, and then tried to move it in as a business record for purposes of habitualizing them. They said, no, that wasn't a business record. You generated it after the fact, as they do here, to summarize facts and put it before the jury and say, this is our version. You have to accept this version of the evidence. Well, what they're doing is trying to establish a predicate. The state acknowledges they still got to establish a predicate. Now, in the motion for digital data to exclude it, I set forth, I think, 4 different predicates that have been recognized in this state, and that was through the case, I think, Walker versus Anderson, that's cited in the memorandum. And all of them establish one common theme, as I announced to the court, that there has to be a tight connection in multiple manners between the facts and the defendant, excluding all other reasonable probabilities and possibilities. So to just sit there and summarize some fact, put it before a jury, and say these are all clearly discernible from the evidence that we're going to introduce, disregard anything Mr. Wiggs has to say, or any expert, or anybody else he has to offer you, and accept this, and then tell the court we've established a predicate, that's impermissible. You're generating facts after the fact, trying to use it as a business record, and then establish a predicate at the same time. That's only proper when the facts are not subject to dispute between the parties, that you can admit a summary in that manner. So we'd object to it on those grounds. The defense likewise would point out to the court that proceeding in the manner that the state would suggest would preclude the defense from being able to examine each witness as they dealt with the evidence, the digital data, how they got it, what they did with it, how it came to it, and would deprive the defense of a right of confrontation and cross-examination under the law. So I advise the court, Judge, that one, the state can stack some inferences to try to reach that predicate, but one, the standard is a higher standard than the state may assume it is. And on these grounds, we'd ask that the state's motion at this stage be denied.
Mr. Commissioner, do you wish to respond?
Couple things. First of all, none of the stuff that Mr. Wiggs is arguing has anything to do with what this motion is requesting. It is saying that these records, which have been determined in a pretrial ruling, are relevant, that we are taking the data from them and compiling them into a chart. That's all this motion is saying. What he is talking about deals with potential JOA arguments, and when he starts talking about the stacking of inferences. This request simply talks about compiling data that will be in front of the jury and putting it into a chart. That's it. Mr. Wiggs, please don't interrupt me.
I'm sorry, counsel. You don't need to get upset.
The other thing is, this is not the first time we have been presented with, quote, case law without any sort of citation. I have absolutely no idea why Mr. Wiggs did not actually just give you this Smith versus Carlisle case that he says is from 2024 and instead just gave you his memo about it. But this doesn't even include a site for us to look up. I would ask that any case law that Mr. Wiggs is referencing or trying to have referenced in any sort of legal argument, at the very least, he provide us the actual citation and put it on the record.
It's on the case I gave you, the document I gave you, if you'd look thoroughly through it. The case citation is 378 Southern 3rd 1213. The other decision is cited within it as well.
That's all, Judge.
Thank you, sir. Wish to respond, Mr. Wiggs?
Yes. The Volcker case is cited right in there, okay, as I just stated. Smith versus Carlisle is the decision of 2024, okay? Now, that's what cites Volckermer. It's a 24 decision I pulled off of Florida Law Weekly. It's a current decision, okay? But going back to Mr. Camuccio's argument, he's stating that just providing a summary is not damaging to the defense. It is damaging because you're emphasizing particular facts only for the state. You're giving them a summary. I don't think Mr. Camuccio would agree that I could create a summary of Richard Connor and put that into the record as well, as to what his take on it all is. So no, it's not appropriate. You're emphasizing facts. Now the law that he has cited in his motion to grant that is when the parties stipulate these facts are undisputable. Okay, that's when a memorandum or a breakdown summary is appropriate. But those facts are of dispute. You heard Richard Connor. Richard Connor stated that you can't link the IP up with the digital data because it expired. I don't think the state's going to put that in the summary. Okay? Richard Connor said all that data is expired. It can't be linked to a device, a location, or an individual. And that anybody that used a router had access to that same system. But at this stage, none of the data links to an IP address. And so we heard technical testimony on that, of which the state didn't refute at that hearing. Point out to the court. I talked to the court, I said, these are the foundations, these are the predicates, of which the state offered no evidence, how they would try to establish a predicate at trial. So the only thing they did is they ushered in a bunch of documents and said, these are a business record. Now they're seeking to develop a predicate through a summary, of which the state just objected to the plausibility of the defense doing the same. So it should be denied.
All right, anything further?
No, sir.
State's motion is granted. The state may admit evidentiary summaries pending proper foundation. We'll move on to number 4. And state's number 4, fourth motion is a motion to prevent exclusion of witness. Please proceed.
That's not, yeah. That's not. Yes, Your Honor, this is pretty pro forma, pretty standard. The victim's father in this case, Dr. Shaver, has requested to be present during the trial. He will be called as a witness, probably towards the beginning of the state's case. The Florida statute that I cited in my motion indicates specifically that the next of kin may not be sued from the courtroom during this type of trial. So we're just asking Mr. Shaver, the next of kin, Michael Shaver, be permitted to watch the trial.
Because we don't have, I know that there's a discretionary concept with that same rule that allows the court discretion on whether to grant it or to deny it. We don't have any problem with Mr. Shaver sitting in during the trial. We would ask the court to instruct Mr. Shaver that he's not at liberty to speak to anybody during the trial about anything that he hears heard within the courtroom. And that the rule of sequestration would still be applicable to him even at the conclusion of his testimony, because we're not going to release him.
All right, as a stated agreement, without objection, a motion is granted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, and the state's fifth motion is state's response to defendant's motion for presence of prospective jurors during the entire court diary process. So this goes to Mr. Woods' motion to permit the diary to be present when we are at the bench selecting the jury members.
What I've asked judges is that they remain in the courtroom during the entire voir dire. And I've expressed in the motion the basis for this. I know the state didn't voice any objections, saying they'd leave it to the discretion of the court, but the concepts were to allow the witness or the defendant not to be confused, be able to look at the prospective juror to the conclusion, know if they want that witness, just like any witness on the stand has a right to be refreshed at any stage by looking at anything. We'd ask that the prospective juror remain in the courtroom. Second, we've done it historically as a matter of practice. Further, we have the white noise sound system that precludes any invasion or any fear that the prospective juror is going to be somehow tainted by us discussing matters at the bench. So I don't think there's any danger in it. But I think it's a necessity in a trial of this fashion and the size of the jury.
No, I did not ask to leave this in the discretion of the court. I specifically stated that the state requests that you deny their request. Mr. Wiggs definitely seems to have a habit of citing case law that does not actually have anything to do with the issue at hand. For this matter, he has cited cases dealing with refreshing the recollection of a witness, which has nothing to do with jury selection. He has also cited case law about that deals with 3850 claims dealing with whether or not an attorney should have stricken a juror who had, through his statements, shown bias. He does not cite anything that has to do with the issue that he wants the court to do, which would be the rule of criminal procedure, which states that these strikes should be done outside of the presence of the jury. The issues that...
Outside the hearing or outside the presence?
Outside the hearing. I apologize.
Right.
Yeah. However, I think it's important to remember that our job here is to maintain the best record possible so that if this is ever transcribed, that the court reporters can go ahead and actually hear what is happening. I pulled the jury selection from the case where this court actually allowed the procedure as outlined by Mr. Wiggs, and I have the recording of that if the court would like to hear it for itself. I would say that it is much more difficult to hear the bench conference when people are whispering and trying to maintain the spirit of this rule while we are up there doing strikes and having the white noise sound played, as opposed to if we were sitting out here in front of microphones and actually establishing what our reasoning for challenges might be and any sort of legal argument that we may have. Any sort of due process claim fails because it is exactly the same for both sides, whichever route we go. But I believe that it is much more important to make sure we have a clear record of what the legal arguments as to any sort of juror strike should be than anything that Mr. Wiggs has outlined in his motion.
May it please the court. Judge, I don't know if Mr. Camuccio just doesn't understand the concept I'm arguing, but to say that the person can be refreshed, yes, that's a statement that I made in the motion by analogy. No, there's no clear case law on this. There's not. It's a discretionary matter with the court. I didn't see any case law or any argument by the state. Otherwise, the legislature has approved this white noise system. If we go by what Mr. Camuccio is saying, we'll just eliminate it, Judge. We'll never have use of it again in a courtroom. But I don't think that's the concept or the principle that the court wants to follow. But I stated in my motion that any witness, by comparison, any witness on the stand, if they're not refreshed at any stage, they have a right to look at anything to refresh themselves. So I said, comparatively, by analogy or argument, why is a defendant, why would you take all the jurors out of the room and have a mass of jurors sitting outside when you're doing back strikes and you've got multiple strikes in total and leave the defendant confused. I've sat there and people are asking me sometimes when they are removed from the courtroom, well, what's that person? Who was that person? Was that the teacher? Was that the this, that? And you spend more time trying to keep track of where people are seated, which can raise a 3850. Okay, and I said that in my motion. You got to only greaten the odds that you may have a problem down the line on an appeal because you just didn't impose a safeguard to leave them in the courtroom. So I don't know what policy the state thinks they're advancing here to object to this, but I see that there's a warranted and a healthy process leaving the jury in here instead of returning and seeing it up on an appeal and having to readdress the issue again.
All right. I'll grant defense's motion. I'll allow the Beniri members to remain in the courtroom during the entire jury selection process. Okay, we're on to state's number 6, which is state's motion in limine regarding expected testimony of Adam Narvaez.
Yes, Your Honor. Rich Buxton, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The state's motion really focuses on 2 different things. The state deposed the defense listed Mr. Narvaez. The state deposed him. I attached a copy of the deposition to the motion for the court's benefit. The state's focus is on 2 separate sets of statements made to Mr. Narvaez. The first set of statements are made to him by the defendant, Laurie Shaver. Mr. Narvaez indicated that Ms. Shaver, the defendant, told him that she and the victim had a rocky relationship and that there had been a history of abuse. Those statements the state is seeking to exclude because they're clear self-serving hearsay. As we all
I got to pause for that. I'm just going to peek over it. 50 memberships. Holy crap. Thank you, Anne. Brandi is very much going to appreciate that. Wow, 50 gifted memberships. That is so incredibly generous. Look at him go. Look at him go. Wow. I can't. Hopefully Brandi is seeing this right now because she's been in the chat on and off. Wow. Look at it go. I'm going to give it a second to finish giving them all out and then I'll start the video back up again. Wow. Look at all those people getting memberships. And yes, Wendy, I agree. The defense seems to be grasping at straws. I think that we're going to see a lot of this in trial. It's like Vegas on a good day. Yes, I agree, Auntie. Wow. Yeah, if there's closed caption, I will try to keep closed caption on. I like to have closed caption on because I feel like I can't understand words sometimes, and especially when the lawyers get away from the mics. So, yeah. Wow, I think all those memberships finished getting out. Wow. I even got one of those on my other account. Wow, that's so exciting. Yes, I love closed caption. I love closed caption because when I can't understand a word or somebody has an accent, but sometimes it's not totally correct, but at least I'll have a gist of what it is. Thank you again, Anne, for the 50 memberships. That's amazing. Congratulations to everybody that got a membership. Wow, that's a great start to the day, y'all.
all know in this room statements or admissions against a party opponent are admissible, which is why the state is able to introduce the defendant's statement against her. These are self-serving statements. They are inadmissible and can't be presented through the defense by asking the witness, did the defendant tell you X, Y, and Z, or asking the witness, what did the defendant tell you? I've cited the 3 cases of many that apply to self-serving hearsay in my motion. This concept would also apply to any witness that the defendant made similar statements to not just Mr. Narvaez, but because my motion is focused on Mr. Narvaez, I'll limit my discussion to just that. The second portion of the state's motion focuses on statements made by the defendant's daughter, Isabel Shaver, to Mr. Narvaez. As we know, the defense is going to potentially be that Ms. Shaver, Isabel Shaver, was the one that actually shot the victim. Ms. Shaver made statements to Mr. Narvaez years later indicating such. Those are clear out-of-court statements made by a witness, Ms. Isabel Shaver, to Mr. Narvaez, used to prove the truth of the matter asserted, so they are clearly hearsay. By no means is by the state's motion are we trying to prevent Ms. Isabel Shaver from testifying. That's not the focus of the motion. The focus of the motion is to prevent witnesses from being questioned about hearsay statements made by Ms. Isabel Shaver. So, because statements made by Isabel Shaver to Mr. Narvaez are clear hearsay, the question is there a hearsay exception to those statements? And the only exception potentially that could be raised is that it's a statement made by the declarant against the declarant's penal interest, pursuant to 90.804(2)(c). In order for that hearsay exception to be established, the defense, because they're the proponent of the evidence, would have to present or prove three things. Number one, the declarant, Isabel Shaver, is unavailable. Well, we know that's not the case because Isabel Shaver has given a deposition, and by everything I know, she is ready, able, willing, and is going to testify in this case. So that prong cannot be met. Therefore, the exception for a statement against penal interest cannot be established. You don't even have to get to the second and third prongs because, again, Ms. Shaver is available. If you do want to go into further analysis, and which you don't need to, but if you did, the statements are also unreliable. Again, I don't think you need to get this far in the analysis, but they are unreliable considering that Ms. Shaver was questioned on several occasions and never indicated this before. There's some scientific evidence refuting her statements, as well as the testimony of Jeremy Townsend. But again, I'm not going to go into that really in detail because, again, the state's position is Isabel Shaver is available, therefore prong one of this cannot be met, therefore the exception doesn't apply and the statements are hearsay. Pursuant to my ethical obligation, there is a line of cases which I included in the motion, which talks about constitutional due process, and that is the Chambers versus Mississippi case. And I included that because I felt the court needed to be aware of it and needed to at least know about it, so I wanted to make sure the court was aware, and the defense wants to argue this. But it's important to note the Chambers versus Mississippi case cites 401 U.S. 284, 1973 case. That case addressed a Mississippi case in which a third party confessed to a murder to several people, but then recanted the confession. The state obviously did not call this witness for clear reasons. The defense then tried to call that witness and impeach the witness on the statements he made confessing to the murder to other people. Mississippi had a rule which prevented the defense from impeaching their own witness. Florida doesn't have that rule. So the defense could not get the information that this third party confessed to a murder out by calling the witness and impeaching the witness. So then the defense in Chambers versus Mississippi said, okay, we're going to call those three people that the witness confessed that he committed murder to. So they called those witnesses, and the problem with that was it was hearsay, and Mississippi did not have an evidentiary provision allowing, like Florida does, allowing for a declaration against penal interest. So the defense wasn't able to present that information through those witnesses. So because of those voids in Mississippi's evidence code, the U.S. Supreme Court said that the defendant had a constitutional due process right to get the information to the jury, and the evidence code that was in place in Mississippi did not allow that to happen. So what Chambers in Mississippi versus Mississippi basically did was say, on a constitutional due process ground, they allowed those statements, even though they were hearsay, to be admitted to the jury because the defense had no other way of getting that information before the jury, and the U.S. Supreme Court said that's not fair from a constitutional due process. Florida has these provisions, unlike Mississippi. So Florida's evidence code distinguishes Chambers versus Mississippi in that line of cases from the case we have here, this instant case. Chambers pointed out that its holding was not establishing new standards of constitutional law and was not dismissing the authority of the states over their own trial rules. So Chambers didn't find that the evidence code is meaningless and we're going to throw it out and let everything in. Jones v. State, the Florida case, 709 Southern 2nd 512, it's a Florida 1998 case. The court cited Udinas, which was 453 Southern 2nd 17, Florida Supreme Court 1984, which said Chambers was, quote, limited to its facts due to the peculiarities of the Mississippi evidence law, which did not recognize a hearsay exception for declaration against penal interest. So our Florida Supreme Court basically determined that Chambers wasn't applicable because Chambers was meant to fill that void in Mississippi law that Florida did not have. In this case, the defense has every ability whatsoever to present this evidence to the jury, which Chambers couldn't do, but the defendant does because they can call Isabel Shaver and talk about whatever Ms. Shaver wants to say. So that evidence can be presented to the jury by simple traditional methods of calling the witness. The state's focus is, again, not to prevent Isabel Shaver from testifying or limiting her testimony like in that fashion. The state's focus is to prevent the defense from questioning witnesses about the hearsay statements made by Isabel Shaver to Adam Narvaez. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Weeks? Yes, ma'am. Please support. Mr. Pleasure. We're not offering testimony of Mr. Narvaez to speak about the truth of the statements of Isabel Shaver, but the circumstances under which Isabel Shaver has come forward. There's inferences and allegations that, so to speak, she was called late in this game. The record shows she was not, that Kelly Johnson was appointed as a consequence of her moving forward. Mr. Narvaez, his involvement was he spoke to Isabel and then had a talk to Laurie Shaver, and thus there was a consensus at a certain stage to allow Isabel to move forward with her testimony. Thus, that's how Kelly Johnson got appointed as her guardian and went through the steps that she did. It's just to show a sequence of steps as opposed to putting a witness on the stand as if we've just pulled her out of off the street. It just shows a sequence of events with the timing. It's not to prove the truth of the statements of Adam Narvaez, but to show the timeline and why the minor child stepped forward. That's why. And that's a non-hearsay purpose. You know, it's not to just show that she told me this, okay? It's, you know, what happened beyond that point. So that's the reason it would be offered.
Yes, sir.
Which is non-hearsay.
His response?
Being used, if they're eliciting statements made by Isabel Shaver out of court that I shot my father, that is being used to prove the truth of the matter asserted. That's the whole point of it. To explain the circumstances surrounding it is not a valid purpose. That's like me asking a detective to talk about hearsay because it establishes, well, you know, that's like me asking a detective, who did you talk to and what did they say, just to establish the context of the investigation. That's clearly hearsay, and this is no different.
The testimony has not been proffered. Now, the state is saying this is what the child's going to say, and this is how she's going to say it. Judge, I think the state is getting ahead of themselves, assuming everything is hearsay that child could say. The context in which the child makes those representations defines whether it falls outside of the hearsay rules. But the state's saying that child told Mr. Narvaez, I did X, Y, and Z, and then, you know, she's offered as a witness. Okay, no, that's not the context in which those statements will come forward. She confided in Mr. Narvaez about certain facts and events. She confided in Mr. Narvaez about her desire to testify and come forward because of her emotional feelings in this case. That's not hearsay. It explains a timeline and why this child is going to be here testifying. That she's not being thrown under the bus, as the state may suggest, but that there's a rational basis and a timeline why she stepped forward.
All right, is there anything further?
No, sir.
All right, I'll grant the state's motion. The court finds that any testimony regarding the timeline is hearsay, and the court will make the appropriate hearsay rulings at trial.
Yes, thank you.
I believe that leaves us with Mr. Wiggs' motion, which is a motion to request judicial notice of contents of clerk's file.
Yeah. Judge, I filed just as a standard motion asking permissive judicial notice. I don't know exactly what's going to be presented by the state. You'd ask the state to try to work with me and tell me what exhibits they want to use at trial. Today, I confided with the state whether they would do that. Mr. Camuccio says he hasn't figured that out, so I presume that's a no. Okay, so at this stage, I don't know what the state may show, but it may open the door to the introduction of other evidence. So I'd ask the court to leave that door open for permissive judicial notice at trial.
All right, state's response?
Your Honor, we obviously don't have any issue with the fact that the documents within the court file themselves are authentic for purposes of request for judicial notice, but that is not an avenue for admissibility. Just because it's in the court file doesn't mean he can just say, this is from the court file, so jury, here you go. As I said previously, Mr. Wiggs does appear to have a habit of, in front of the jury, referencing and marking pieces of evidence that clearly are inadmissible as far as reports and depositions, and then requiring the state in front of the jury to object to things that are just clearly inadmissible. If he wants any of these items marked, or if he thinks any of these things have been opened up the door to admissibility, I would just ask that outside the presence of the jury, that be proffered as to what the document is and the reason for how it is now admissible, because simply because it is in a court file or in this court file does not make it evidence in this case. And all I'm asking is outside the presence of the jury that be proffered.
If Mr. Camuccio read the motion, he'd see it's a request for permissive judicial notice. Not mandatory judicial notice. I'm not going to be throwing things at a jury judge here. I did ask the court to take mandatory judicial notice of the child's birth certificate, which the child did, which the court did. Okay? This is a request for permissive judicial notice in the event that the door opens. I'm not going to be throwing things at a jury. I would ask the court, judge, can we introduce this at this stage if the state has opened the door on this issue? So, no, it's characterized right in the plain language of the motion itself for permissive notice, and that would be done with the court and with the state.
Oh, to that extent, the request is granted.
Yes. Thank you, Judge.
Is there anything further?
As far as my request that these items be proffered outside the presence of the jury before they're just referenced and marked in their presence, is the court agreeable to that?
Do you have any objection to that, Mr. Wiggs?
No, Judge, and I assumed we would do that. You know, I'm not just pulling things out and throwing at a jury. We would discuss it at the bench.
All right, without objection, the state's request is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe that this is all the matters before the court today. Is there anything further before the court?
The judge, yesterday I had referenced the preliminary jury instructions as far as the two alternate portions from the standard that talk about devices and I just wasn't sure if you had made a decision on which one of those two alternates that you wanted me to put in the instructions to present to you for the preliminary.
Yes, sir, and I believe it would be best to exclude any devices from the courtroom.
All right, so that would be option B, I believe.
Option B, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll make that change, email it to everyone. I've received Mr. Wiggs's proposed jury instructions, and there are some special instructions in there that we'll have to address at some point, whenever the court feels it's appropriate.
Right. All right, we can address that
Just
during trial or during trial.
Right. Just going back, just to clarify the record too, with regards to my motion in opposition to the state's request for a jury summary, in that I had cited Smith versus Carlisle. I had given the state that, and the decision is 378 Southern 3rd at 1213. The state had complained they didn't have a copy of any authority on that. They have it right in the documents that I've handed them as well.
All right, is there anything further?
Yes, sir.
There's nothing further, Judge.
All right, thank you all for attending. We are adjourned. State, would you prepare a proposed order concerning the court's rulings?
Yes, sir.
Please copy Mr. Wiggs, and then once the parties are on the same page, please submit that to the scene.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you,
good day.
Judge.
Yeah, so I see some of you in there saying, how is a mother letting their child do that? I agree. I don't have kids, but I would think if I had a kid, I would want to protect them from that. However, the daughter confessing she would have been 7 years old when that happened. And most areas don't prosecute unless the child's over 10. So she knows that if her daughter's the one that takes the fall, then nothing will happen to her daughter. And yes, she is on bond. So they're still not done with jury selection. I would assume that they would be taking lunch now. So if you haven't watched Brandi's video, we streamed it earlier in the stream to go over the stuff. I'm going to put the link to the other video in the chat. I'm going to take a break. So some of the interviews that I've seen are on like Law and Crime and whatever, and they will definitely ding copyright. I've had that issue on my channel. Have to be very careful with those. If it was a news network like NBC or something like that, I would be able to do it because we have the right to that. But it being on Law and Crime or Court TV, those interviews, they'll get flagged. So I can't play those. But I definitely suggest that people look for those interviews and watch that before the trial starts. I did play some of the news clips that had gone on over the last few years a little while ago. So again, check out Brandi's video. This video that she does goes over everything. It will answer all your questions. And I'm going to monitor the court. So if court starts today, I will come back. So, you know, make sure that you have the bell turned on so you get the notification if we go live again. So just posted the link, and I'm dual streaming on my channel and Brandi's channel. So I've had a lot of fun with you guys this morning. I was hoping the jury selection was going to be a lot quicker, but we'll see. Worst case scenario, we don't go live today, and we'll go back live tomorrow. I'm with you guys the rest of the week. So Brandi is in court for the entire week. They are predicting it will at least be this week, possibly next week for court. So we'll see. It's been, like I said, it's been fun. I appreciate you guys, and we'll be back sometime soon. I don't know what all this stuff is. Well, you know what? I'm just going to select this because I don't know what it is. All right, bye. I'll see you guys later on.